Most business owners I see using Claude are basically using a $20 a month research assistant. They use it to summarize text or simply write an email. And that's not wrong, but it's simply a tiny fraction of what you can build out if you actually go out there and use Claude to the fullest extent. The gap between how most people use Claude and how it can actually function inside a business isn't about prompting. It's about architecture, and that distinction changes everything. The course that you're about to watch is a full build from start to finish. By the end of this video, you're going to have a complete system that's going to handle the operational, content, and management side of things, which you typically hand over to multiple people. I have watched the same course setup work across multiple different businesses. So what I'm going to show you here is something that's transferable regardless of what market you're in or what kind of business you have. So before we get into building some cool stuff with Claude, I want to talk about the Claude mindset, which I think is an important part of what we are going to accomplish here, because I want you to stop thinking about Claude as a chat option and more as a partner that can actually help you in the recurring and even those annoying one-off tasks in your business. So let's talk about this. See, to me, when you think about, say, just ChatGPT, that's a vending machine. So I'm going to write that down so you understand that. You basically have a few different items in there, and then you ask for one item and it gives you an outcome, and that's what you get, and that's all you're going to get. Now, don't get me wrong, if you do use advanced parts of it, which can get a bit technical, it can do all that. But to me, Claude acts more as an executive partner that works with you, especially with a lot of agents and recurring tasks that we're going to talk about in this video. So Claude holds context, it understands your business, it remembers, it even makes decisions on your behalf about how something should operate. So for example, one of the recent automations I have implemented with Claude is email writing and sending, which basically happens on complete autopilot so that it can now write whatever I needed to write without me having to sit down and type out a single word. And in another way, I want you to think about the analogy between a doctor and a pharmacist. So if you go to a pharmacist, you're going to ask for a medicine. You're going to say, hey, this is what I need. And the pharmacist is going to write down and give you the medicine. But if you talk to a doctor actually sits down, asks you a question, diagnose the underlying problem, and thinks about whether you actually need a medicine or you need to fix the underlying issue that's causing you to eat that medicine. So in this, I want to talk about the analogy between a doctor and a pharmacist. So typically when you want something, you go to the pharmacist and say, this is the medicine that I need. The difference here is that Claude's more like a doctor. So rather than just asking for a medicine, you can ask Claude to run a diagnostic. And it's going to run a diagnostic. It's going to figure out what the problem is. And rather than just giving you a medicine, it's going to help you make sure that problem doesn't happen again. Of course, it's going to solve the problem that you have right now, but it's also going to make sure that this problem doesn't reoccur in the future. Now, another mindset thing I want to talk about here, and I think this is very, very crucial, is that don't try to automate something that you haven't done manually. I'll give you an example. I have two kids. They are 7 and 4-year-old. I remember when they were tiny, tiny babies and they were just learning to walk. They didn't just start running. They didn't just get up one day and they started sprinting. No, they had to try to walk. They had to fall down. They had to have failures. But once they figured out how to walk, eventually they started running. And now, trust me, they won't stop. And I'm telling you all this to let you know that when you are looking to automate things using Claude, it is very, very crucial that you do two things. One, you do it manually. That is, you learn to walk. You learn to make sure that it is exactly what you want and the outcome is what you're getting. And the second thing is that even if you do go into automation, always check and double check your work. Because the way automation setup works inside of Claude, if you're building something like this, it kind of compounds, it grows. So if you make a mistake at this point, it's all going to go haywire over here. And you're going to end up wasting a lot of tokens. You're going to end up wasting a lot of effort, and you don't want that. And again, it's a very, very important mindset consideration that when a lot of business owners start to think of using AI, they think about the tasks they hate doing or the tasks that they feel like they've been putting off for a long time and they could just as well automate via AI. The problem with that is that when you do that, you end up automating things that don't really matter anyway. So instead, I want you to focus on things that are repeatable, are process driven, but are also profitable. Because if we can automate the repeatable process driven tasks that actually do them better, you can actually increase your revenue. And let me tell you this, as a business owner, nothing makes me more excited than increasing my revenue. So if I waste my AI tokens and my time on things that don't really move the needle in my business, I just end up freeing my time, not knowing then how to still grow my business. But if you use AI the right way, you can actually use it to grow your business as well. So having said that, let's get into it and let's walk you through the Claude ecosystem. Oh, one thing before I let you go, this is a long video. Please bookmark it, save it, come back to it again if you have to, but don't lose this because this might be the most impactful video you get to watch today and over the next few weeks to come. It's going to change the way you run your business using Claude. So in this particular module, we're going to talk a little bit about the Claude ecosystem, and it's important that you understand this so you're using the right tool for the right thing. And look, a lot of business owners that I talked to, including myself actually early on, started with ChatGPT. And that made sense because back then it was the default choice. It was a good tool. I mean, just the quality of its writing back in 2023 November was not great, but it was getting there and it started to get better with leaps and bounds. But since Claude's come into the picture, it's gotten really good. But again, if you're using Claude for the first time, if you're not sure where to start, I'm going to guide you. I'm going to help you so you know exactly what you need to do and when you need to do it, how you need to do it. Those are very, very important things. There are four Claude services or surfaces, as you want to call them, that you need to be aware of. And I'm going to explain to you what they are and how you navigate across them to utilize them the way you want. So let me write that out and I'll show you exactly how to move around with it. Number one is Claude Chat, which is not much different to ChatGPT. So this is what, a lot of people are used to using with simple questions. So, how do I do this? How do I do that? I remember there was a time when I would ask Claude for recipes. So you could use it for that as well if you enjoy cooking. But that's the most simplest way to use Claude. Then you've got Claude Projects. Now, this is really useful because here you are building, let's just say, a folder on your computer. It's a bit similar to that. And it contains the context of your project. So without you having to build skills files or doing a lot of advanced things that we'll talk about through this training, using Claude Projects to basically consolidate information. We often do this internally within our team when we are looking to centralize knowledge, like if you're doing a product launch, if you want to dump in all the information about the product, the funnel, the sales copy, emails, everything, that goes into Claude Projects. So again, if you want to think about it in the simplest form, this is like a folder. And it's typically accessible both on the web and on the desktop tool as well. So I'll show you this. Claude Chat is simply what you use over here. So it would be a simple independent chat without any context. There might be some context from your memory, but that would be it. Projects, which is also available inside of the desktop tool, I'll switch to that in a few minutes, is where you actually dump in a lot of files. You build some context around what you're doing, and it always refers to those files and some custom instructions as well when you are trying to use it. And then number three is Claude Code. Now, typically, this is a bit more developer friendly, but with their interfaces, they've tried to make it easy for people like you and me to use as well. So if you're a business owner, this is something you can actually now use without a lot of dev knowledge. Now, I know some people extend it a little bit by using like Visual Studio, Visual Code, and that way they can actually push it even further. I don't personally do that. I'll show you still how you can if you choose to go in that direction. But I will say that if you're just using their desktop interface, that's more than enough. But just to show you this, if you go to Claude Code here, it's going to actually ask you to download the desktop tool and utilize it. And it works on both Windows and PC, so you don't have to restrict yourself just to one thing. I have both of them and I use it across both those platforms. And then you've got Claude Cowork. Now, the best way to explain Cowork to you would be the data sits on your computer locally or considered in the cloud, but you have direct access to it via your computer, so it's not browser based. But Claude is able to access those files and independently work inside of that folder. So the best example I could give you for that is, say, if you wanted to do your finances and you wanted to dump in all your bank statements, all your expenses, invoices, everything into one folder and ask Claude to consolidate everything, create a spreadsheet out of it, it can do all of that. It won't be able to do it that easily with code. I mean, it can, but Claude Cowork then makes more sense because the source of input and the source of output is the same. It's the folder that it's working inside of. So Claude Cowork is exceptionally good if you're trying to do tasks that are contained within a folder structure. So again, we have the folder structure here as well, but I'll say this is a little bit more localized. But let me show you exactly what they look like on desktop. So this is Claude Desktop. As you can see, it's quite similar to web as well. Not much different. You can have chats here. You can switch to co-work, and you can also switch to Claude Code if you want to. And even within Claude Code, it kind of works within folders. But if you want to publish things on the web, that's where you would use Claude Code. So if you wanted to build an app and publish it, that's where you would get the most value out of it. And again, you probably see a lot of other things here, such as routines and so on. Don't worry too much about it. We will cover all of that throughout this training because this is a very comprehensive course. The next thing I want to talk with you about is models. And models are basically underlying large language models that you use to create content or create anything you want within Claude. So let's talk about models. And the three particular models that Claude deals in. And those are Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. Now, the reason Claude has named it like that, just to give you some interesting insight, is because of their creative capability and scale that they go after. For example, Haiku is sort of short version, and that's often used in poetry. So Haiku is typically good for short things. Social media posts, maybe, but if you wanted like something as simple as give me this recipe or do this simple math, that's where you would use Haiku. It's very simple operational things. And to be fair, it's likely that 50% of your work as a business owner will fall into that. For example, like I said, simple social media posts can be used or created rather in Haiku. If you wanted to draft simple messages or responses, Haiku is okay for that. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. But quality-wise, it's not that great, but it is cheap and it is much faster. I say cheap because Claude is basically measuring everything based on how you use it. It's all token-driven. So if you use Haiku, it's not going to go too far against your quota. So that's what Haiku is good for. Then you've got Sonnet. And again, Sonnet is a bit more like a balanced poem, right? So it's a little bit longer. It's the intermediate model. So you've got balance of quality and speed and consumption. And Sonnet is something I use majorly. Like 40% of the times I'm using Sonnet. And that's enough for me for even development work. Some people like to only use Opus because they like to build everything in one shot. I don't do that. I do step by step. And again, I'll walk you through all of that too later. But Sonnet works for 40% of your use cases. Then you've got Opus, which is absolutely impressive model. It is really good. There are not many parallels to Opus at the moment out there. And Opus is the best one. This is the principal engineer model. It's used for complicated tasks. It's used for something which needs to be mapped out and done over many turns. So for example, people who are a little bit lazy with Claude, they're just going to use Opus and say, hey, just build me this thing. And they're going to rely on Opus just building everything in one shot, which again, I insist is not a good way of doing it, but you can do it if you want to. If you do build something in one shot, then using Opus is your best bet. And at the time of this recording, they have different models that are being offered. So if I go over to Claude, for example, let's start a new chat. You've got Haiku at 4.5, Sonnet at 4.6, and Opus at 4.7. And they have some older models here as well, 4.6, and Sonnet 4.5. I haven't particularly used all of them. I just stick to the models that are available here. And then you can also choose to turn on adaptive thinking, which, if you've got a complex task, it's going to think a little bit more about what it is you're trying to do. So let's go to that. Again, you can make it adaptive or not adaptive. For Haiku, you can make it extended or not extended. So it's entirely up to you how you want to navigate that, but those are the three main models available within Claude. Now, I will add this caveat that if you are going to use extended thinking, Claude is going to think more about that problem. It's going to think step by step. It's not just going to give you a quick deduction. What that means is going to be a bit slower and it's going to consume more credit. So just bear that in mind as you are using extended or even adaptive version, because if you use adaptive version, it's going to think your task in multiple steps. And that's not a bad thing, but just be aware that it will cost you more and it is going to also be a little bit slower. Now, if you are in a simple $20 a month plan, to be honest, you might think pricing is not a concern for you because $20 a month is your ceiling, and you'd be partially right. The challenge is that even at $20 a month, Claude is measuring your consumption against how much you actually use. So let me show you this. If I go to settings, for example, and I'm going to go into my usage over here, and you can see like I have already consumed about 40% of my weekly limits, right? And I've consumed 0% here. But even just a simple message, I want to show you this example. So let's go to a new chat and I'm going to ask it to write me a social media post. And I'll just show you how much credits that consumes at the Sonnet model, which is what I typically use. And I'm going to turn off adaptive thinking for now. Hey, I'm just doing a demo on a live call. Could you please create a Facebook post for me that talks about my business, given everything you know about me? So a very simple Facebook post using one of my skills, for example, that I have previously trained it on. What happens here is it's going to go back and read the skill, and it's going to go back and check the memory, and it's going to create a Facebook post for me. So on desktop, actually, it often tells you how many credits, how many tokens are being consumed, and you get a limited number of tokens every 5 hours, right? So Claude has this built-in tiered or metered usage. So you consume X number of tokens in those 5 hours, after which you have to wait, and then it refreshes every 5 hours, but all of that counts towards your weekly usage. So you can see this is my post that's been written, and let's go back and check what the usage looks like right now. So I'm going to refresh this, and you can see it's already used about 3% of my token limit, which is not very high. So I mean, I could get 33 of these posts every 5 hours, which you might think is pretty good. But the thing is, we are trying to build very comprehensive systems that can do all of this at a larger scale. So I'm on a 20-a-month plan on this account. So it comes down to how much you're willing to spend as well. If you use Opus, it's going to cost a whole lot more. If you use Haiku, it's going to cost much less. So all that matters. And again, you don't want to use the wrong kind of thing at the wrong time. Now, it is possible, as I explain you and walk you through Claude Code, for example, it is possible to actually ask it to use specific models for specific things, but not in this environment, not right now. Still, you get an idea that when you're running a business, you want to use the right kind of model. Otherwise, you just end up consuming those credits. And yeah, it's not going to hurt you right now, but quite often I have overconsumed my credits within the 5-hour window, and then I have to wait to replenish them. Or of course, I could update and go for $100 a month, $200 a month plan. But then again, it's entirely up to you what you want to do. I can tell you that using just a 20-a-month plan, I'm able to build a couple of web apps, do a lot of my writing work, and do all those things when I spread this out throughout my day. So having said all that, let me also draw a quick comparison as to which one should you be using, Claude or ChatGPT. If you are using ChatGPT, look, I have been a Claude fanboy for quite a while, but I will admit that some of the recent moves that they have made with the price experimentations, or how they have restricted the quality or the quantity of tokens that we get every 5 hours, is a little bit annoying. And recently, ChatGPT released their, I think 5.5 it was, which is supposed to be exceptionally good, even better than Opus 4.7. So I think you should always be testing different things. You should always be trying out what's kind of working for you, what's working for your use case at the moment. But I will say this, that if you're a business owner, Claude is, for $20 a month, exceptionally good, and you don't need anything else. I mean, you could use Gemini, for example, for image creation and all those things, but Claude does about 90% of the work that you need to do in your business. So hopefully this gives you an understanding of the Claude ecosystem. What are the different things? Where are they located? And how you're able to utilize all of them. So let's continue, and in this module number 4, we'll be talking a little bit about prompt engineering. But I should warn you that my approach to prompt engineering isn't about say this exactly as you want to prompt and you will get a Facebook post or a blog article written for your research done for you. Instead, what I want to do is explain to you how to think in terms of frameworks. We're not trying to trick Claude to give us the best outcome. We're trying to effectively explain ourselves to Claude. And when prompt engineering became a big thing in early 2025, this is one of the things that everyone talked about. Forget about developers, forget about social media content creators or video editors or anything else. The people that are going to win are the people that can communicate effectively with Claude. And I know it's easy to just open up Claude and brain dump whatever you're thinking, and hopefully it gets what you're trying to say. But it's actually no different to being in a relationship where if all you're doing is brain dumping everything on someone else, they're not going to really understand you what you're after. They might be able to guess it, but chances are that 100% of the time they won't be able to guess exactly what it is that you want. So through this exercise, I'm going to explain to you how to actually do prompt engineering right with Claude, so that you're able to explain to it everything you want and get back in return everything that you need. So Claude 4.0 versions, since we were talking about version 3 and whatnot before, Claude 4.0 versions are actually different than before because they no longer infer your intent and they cannot expand on vague requests, right? So this is not ChatGPT where it's telling every time, hey, that's a great idea. No, this is actually a little bit stricter. It will give you what you ask for and nothing else. I compare it to, following the Finnish societies, and I live in Finland, and the people here are very, very literal, right? So there's a joke famously that goes like this. A man gets to a train station and asks the train conductor, like, hey, does the train from here go to Helsinki? The train conductor says yes. Okay, he sits down to wait. This is like back 20, 30 years ago where there were no timetables, electronic timetables. Anyway, so he sits down. There's no train for an hour. He gets up again, goes up to the train conductor and say, is there a train from here to Helsinki? The train conductor says, yes, there is. He sits down. Another couple of hours. He says, you've been telling me that there's a train from here to Helsinki. Fine, but why is the train not here? Like, where's the train? He said, oh, it comes in tomorrow morning. Right? And that's the point, is that you gotta ask Claude exactly what it is that you want without trying to have it understand your intent or being vague about it. So it is very, very important that you structure how you talk to Claude in a way so that it gives you exactly what you're after. So I'll give you a case in point. This was the post that we had just tried. I'm going to demo. I'm just doing a live demo on a call. Demo on a live call. Could you please create a Facebook post for me that talks about my business, given everything you know about me? This is as vague as it can get. Fortunately, because I have skills built into Claude, it was able to pick up those skills and actually write a post, which is fine. But let's now try this out in a different way. So we're going to approach this completely differently, and I'm going to show you what the outcome of that looks like. So now, as you can see, my prompt is a little bit different. I start with what I need, I give it some context, and I give it the ideal outcome that I'm expecting. The more specific I get with it, the better the outcome will be. And in this case, actually, I'm going to just use the simple Haiku, right? I'm not even going to use Sonnet, which is what I had used previously, but I'm going to show you that even with an inferior model, but with better context, how the outcome differs. And again, this is an inferior model, like I said, but it's simply taking in my information and it's reading my memory still, just like it was doing before. And I'm going to show you the night and day difference between this post and the post that it created before. And again, we'll look at the token consumption as well in both of these processes, and I'll show you what the difference is. So here's the post. Let's go look at it. 3 months ago, I realized something while sitting in the kitchen watching my kids finish dinner. I've been so focused on building systems and automating parts of the business that I wasn't actually living the freedom I was trying to create. I was still doing the work of 5 people, blah, 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 blah. And again, 13 years, that's how long I've been building things online, products, launches, sequences, funnels, blah, blah, blah. And the tech is almost always the easy part. The hard part is getting clear on what you're building the business for. If you're figuring out right now, I'd love to hear where you're at. Drop a comment, right? Compared to Haiku, where now it's actually built more of a story because it had richer context. Had I actually used Sonnet and Peck, had I used Opus, the output might be dramatically different. It would cost me more, but the output would be dramatically different. But just to show you on the consumption as well, so now it's at 4%. So just use 1% because we use an inferior model, but we gave it better context. And because we gave it better context, the outcome was better. So again, this is where the human always wins. AI is fantastic at making your life easier, giving you better output every time you want it. But then you have to justify it by giving better input, by giving greater context, by actually leading it where you want it to go, specifically with Claude. So again, this is very, very important. Don't use vague prompts when you're using Claude. Be as specific as you can. Be as generous as you can by asking what you want, and it will give it to you. Now, if you wanted to improve this even further, here's what I advise you to do. So you can do what I just did, or you can think about this simple framework. We've got role, we've got context, we've got task, we've got formats, and we've got constraints. So you can, for example, in this case, explain to it like, hey, act as a social media manager, act as this or act as that. But if you're unsure on that, if you're unclear on that, you can skip role entirely. That is perfectly fine. Some studies have shown that when you give it a specific role, it gets to pigeonholed into how it thinks, which again is okay as long as you know what you're asking for. But if you ask it to think like a social media content creator, it won't be able to think like a finance person or a CEO or a support agent, which, may not be necessary. But that's again where the context becomes important. You have to give it as much as you can, and you have to then let it creatively use that, even on the most inferior model. Then you explain what task it is that you're trying to do, right? So what kind of thing you want it to do, what the ideal outcome looks like in that case. Then again, the format, if it's a short post, like guide it. Just say, I want a 50-word post, a 100-word post. I want you to write a letter. I want you to write an essay, whatever it is, tell it so that it's able to deliver you exactly what it is that you need. And finally, you've got constraint. And constraint is very, very important, because if you don't build guardrails around what it is doing, it's going to accidentally make mistakes. For example, let's say if I want to write about one of our platforms, which is called Mailview, it's an email marketing solution. If I ask it to write about Mailview, it might go ahead and compare it to ActiveCampaign or Aweber. But what if I don't want it to? What if I don't want it to refer to any of my competitors? So I could draw a clear red line. Do not talk about any of my competitors. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, or do this, do this. So you're essentially telling it what its restrictions are. And when you define those restrictions, it knows to play within those for you, so it can give you exactly what you want without going past what you have drawn as a red line. So again, if you are unsure where to start, always start with this. Explain the role, explain the context, explain the task, explain the format, and then finally give it constraints so it doesn't go beyond that. Now, this is a little bit technical as well, or it might seem technical. Claude understands XML really well. So if you don't want to give it in just plain English language, write it like this. Like, role is this, context is this. When you write it in this format, this is XML. This is slightly easier to use for Claude. It just means less token consumption, but again, it's a little bit advanced. So if you don't want to worry about it, don't worry about it. The outcome is still going to be the same. It's just going to consume less on its behalf. Let's talk about the self-critique loop as well, which could be quite important if you are trying to get to something, but you have to train Claude to get there. So for example, let's say this business post that I got, which I thought was actually quite good. This is something that works for me, but I could read it and I feel maybe something is missing. So a very simple prompt to Claude would dramatically increase it. And this is what you have to do. So I made two changes here. It's the same prompt as before, but now, as I mentioned, I put this around these triangular brackets, and then I'm asking this additional thing. Write a first draft. Now critique it for X. And this is where, when you're asking for critique, it's a good idea to get it to think extensively. And now produce the revised version. Think about what your X is, right? So I've said already that, look, I want it to show me in the best light. So I'm going to change this to authority building, right? So critique it for authority building, that it should basically help me build authority. And if it doesn't, I want you to rewrite it again. So once you set this into thinking mode, once you ask it to go out there and do something, it's going to rethink what it's done, and it's going to come back with you with an additional step. It's going to consume a little bit more, but it's going to now give you exactly what you need to get the outcome that you want. So let's wait for this to finish. But again, we're going to look at the token consumption as well. You can see it's at 6% now, so it's used 2% already compared to 1% that it did before. But again, we are looking for an outcome that is way better than this other post that it had written before. Let me go find it. This post, right? This was a previous one, which I thought was better than the first one. So we're looking now at version 3. So this is the first draft. 3 years ago, I made a commitment to myself, stop working past 6 p.m. no matter what. You can say it's carrying the story from here, but already it's a little bit more aligned because it's using numbers a bit more, which I think is going to grab attention for people. But then it's saying critique is this, and here's a revised version, right? So 3 years ago, I made a commitment to myself, stop working past 6 p.m. no matter what. My kids were growing up, my wife was managing the house solo most nights, and I was burning out chasing the next launch. Then I realized something. So again, it is now using numbers, and I feel, and you can always take this to any other AI and ask it, hey, which one is better for authority building? So what Claude is doing now that you ask it to critique its own work, is it's reviewing what it's done, but it sees where there are gaps. So typically in business, when we use Claude, we do this by setting up agents. But again, we're doing it in a very basic way using chat right now. So it's a very simple thing of write something, judge it, and then write it again based on what you think was missed, right? And you can make it do that over and over and over again. The thing is, at some point, it's going to say, look, I've done the best I could. So this is what we do to get the best outcome with every piece of content that we're putting out there. It does consume, like I said, a little bit more. So it consumed 2% instead of like 1% of my 5-hour consumption. But now the outcome is strikingly better than even what Claude Sonnet had produced, just because we asked it to review its own work. It's no different to you writing a piece of thing or to you developing a piece of thing and then reviewing it again to say, have I done my best work here? If not, you take another stab at it and you fix the things that you know are incorrect. This is the self-critique loop that allows Claude to do a better job than it would have done had it only been doing it on a single iteration. Now, if you're thinking about some other examples of what a good prompt would look like, forgoing the triangle brackets, I'll tell you this. Like, I'm just going to copy this and paste for you, and I'll explain to you why this prompt works exceptionally well. So let me just move this around. So there we go. Role, you are the lead product strategist for company name. So again, you give it basically a particular position. So let me just circle that. So you give it a position and you define what company it is working for. Then the task, this is the primary objective, is to assist the team in developing technical roadmaps. Then let's say the voice is insightful, objective, and concise. So this is no different to basically the task in formatting. And formatting in this case is using tables for comparisons, provide all measurements in grams or milliliters, and in constraints, if a technical specification is missing, flag it immediately. Do not provide speculative performance data. Right? So all this, when you feed in a prompt like this, it gives it the entire structure that it needs to be able to build everything for you the way is acceptable to you. And it's okay to go in and change this. It's okay to disagree with some of this and change how you structure your prompts, but you got to be happy with the outcome. If you're not happy with the outcome, chances are that it's not Claude. It's the way that you're giving it information. It's the way you're asking it for specific information. Because let me tell you this, Claude has been trained like OpenAI on like 10 to 15% of data on the internet, which is enough to basically make it exceptionally good. So when it struggles to give you what you want, it's not because it doesn't know what it needs to know. It's because it doesn't really know what you're asking for. So change your question, change your approach, offer more, and I promise you, you'll get a much better outcome in return. And I'll also say this, that when you're using Claude, if you create something, for example, just what I created right now as I was showing you this, and you're like, hey, this actually looks really, really good, then I want you to make this a permanent prompt in database. So use Notion if you have to, or anything else. There are tools like Prompt Buddy out there, which you can go in and you can save this prompt, and this is going to then allow you to repeat it over and over again. You can share it with the team as well, and it's always going to give you a guaranteed good response, because now you have perfected what you want and you've seen it and you like it, and you can just go ahead and have it create similar stuff for you in the future as well. So that way, next time you're trying to build something like this, you're not going to stumble and make mistakes through the process. So again, when you find a prompt that works exceptionally well for you, save it somewhere. I would advise you to use markup files, but that's for another day. Now let's talk about Claude projects, and this is where we're going to move from just learning or talking about and actually doing implementation work. And projects are basically what you would imagine chat to be, if they always remembered context, even when you started a new chat, and if they would always know what you're talking about based on the files that are available to them right at that moment. So let me share my screen. I'll explain to you this step by step. So let's say if you want to ask Claude something, you would typically use the chat feature over here. You start a new chat randomly outside a project and you would ask whatever you want to ask. But if you want to build more context around what you're doing, you can do more advanced things, and we'll talk about skills and all those things. But quite often you just want to give it some context and you want to repeat that context every single time. I'll give you a practical example. Let's say we do a lot of product launches in our business and we need to write a lot of sales copy. So we write an opt-in page copy, a front-end sales page copy, upsell 1, upsell 2, upsell 3, so on and so forth. And that happens every time. So what we did previously is we created frameworks for all of these things. So we now have, for example, anytime we do a product launch, we create a new folder where we dump in all the files, right? So not this one, but let me show you another example. This one would be it, where we dump in all the files, like files about positioning, about copy, about VSLs, emails, all those things. So when we ask a specific thing of Claude to do, it works within the context of that project. So that way we don't need to fetch the files every time from our computer or ask you to refer to something we used 2 or 3 months ago. It's just able to work straight out the gate, rather than us having to give it context every single time. So you don't need to start from blank. Now, fortunately, what's happened recently is that Claude's also made this feature available inside of the desktop application. So let me switch over and show you this. If you use the desktop application, you are able to utilize this right inside of Claude Chat and Claude Cowork as well. Let me show you. So right here, you see we have projects similar to what we have on Claude over there. Plus, we also have Claude Code where you can have projects as well. This is something I'm specifically using right now because I want to be able to just keep everything organized in one place. And I'm able to do that by using these projects. And even if you head over to Code, I'm suspecting that eventually they'll bring in projects here as well. It just makes sense to keep everything organized, though I do know that the Mac application has slightly better organization for the projects that you're working on. So Claude Projects, great feature just to keep everything organized in clusters. And setting up one of these projects is quite easy as well. You just head on over to projects and click on new project. This is where you would name it something. So let's say I would call this Claude course, and give whatever description you want. This is internal. This is only really going to be useful for you. So anything you feel that is relevant to give it context so you can come back to in future and know what this is about, that'd be great. So done. Create project, and now you're looking at this canvas. I'll explain to you all the important things that you need to be aware of here. So for starters, you've got memory, right? Now memory only shows up after you've had a few chats. Memory within this context is about this project. I'll show you an example. So let's say if I go to my brain clone, this is where you can see memory based on what's been discussed, what's been talked about, what's basically come up in the chats. Then you've got here instructions. So I think this is a good example to show you. Instructions is what you basically ask Claude to keep in mind as it is answering you. So maybe you don't like long M dashes, you can tell Claude that. Maybe it wants you wanted to remember some context about what we're trying to do with this project, you can ask Claude to do that. So just as much detail as you can give would be useful. What I've actually done here is within our AI Revenue Engine community, I have shared what we call a brain clone, which is basically a dump of who I am, what I do, and we've synthesized it into a massive prompt, which we have put it in here as instruction. So anytime Claude works in this project, it remembers this. So it doesn't give generic feedback, generic advice. It actually goes up and kind of explains to us based on where we are, what we've asked for. So this is where those kind of instructions are exceptionally good. Then you've got files. And by the way, you can put in a lot of files here, but this is where you would typically put any markup files, any PDFs, any Excel sheets, whatever you want that it can refer to when it's trying to create content for you and is trying to do things for you in that project. I would advise you as much as possible to use markup files. And the reason why I advise markup files is because they are easy to consume for Claude. If they're easy to consume for Claude, it means it's going to use less credits when it's trying to synthesize information for you. If you dump in 100 files in here and they're all different files, Claude's going to first have to go to those files and understand which ones are relevant within the given context of what you're asking. And then it's going to try and synthesize that information for you. Nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly okay. But just note that you're going to end up using more tokens in that case, which, eventually is just going to cost you more based on what we have discussed so far. So just keep those things in mind. And then, of course, anytime you want to start a chat, you can start a chat here. You can upload files. You can use skills and connectors. We'll cover those a little bit later as well. And you can choose the models here. And, you can even use audio voice mode to basically talk to Claude. And you can start kicking off your chats just with this. The good thing is when you have these projects, all the chats remain within one folder. So for example, I use one of these folders here to do long form video scripts, just basically ideation and scripting. And all of this, for example, I keep in one folder, which makes it easy for me to refer back to when I need to further down the line. When you are doing these chats, if you create any assets, for example, it is also possible for you to actually add it to projects. So this is something that's going to be now available within the project in the future as well. So now that I've done it, I'm going to close this, go back to long video, and you can see we have the full Claude course outline here as well available. So exactly as I'm showing you, I use Claude the same way to make sure that I have full outline of what I'm going to teach, what I'm going to be discussing, and that's all built in using these features. Now, I know we talked about instructions, but I want to make a very, very important point here. This is basically your business brain, right? So this is not something you want to just haphazardly put down. This was something that was very scientifically created by me. Again, we use the brain clone that we talk about within the AI Revenue Engine community. And this is very important because essentially this should synthesize all of your information into one long piece of text. And that is important because that gives Claude very important context. Because if you rely on Claude's own memory, it's going to randomly pick certain things that may or may not be very impactful for you. But if you synthesize it purposely, intentionally, then it's going to take the best parts of you, best parts of your business, and it's going to turn that into something that you can utilize every single time. So when you're building this out, it is very important you sit down and build it out. If you're not sure, again, go into the community, get that training, or you can simply talk to Claude, to ChatGPT, and whatever, and just explain that you're trying to build a system prompt, which would be custom instructions to how projects should be handled, and it should interview you, should ask you questions to get that result out of you. And when we talk about these files here, I just quickly want to talk about what to upload and what not to upload. You can connect your GitHub to this, which is really useful if you are trying to build an app, for example, a software application. You can also connect it to your Google Drive, which is also a very good way to basically get out information from your Google Docs and Google Sheets. So that's very useful as well. And this way you can actually search resources. For example, I could do this and it automatically gets added here as well. But the thing I want to be very careful about is don't add any API keys. Don't add sensitive information. Don't add something that is private to you. Because if you add that, basically, it just becomes accessible to Claude anytime it needs to access this project. So just be careful about what kind of information you're adding in. Don't add anything more than you have to. I mean, same way you wouldn't give your keys or something to a random person in a messenger chat, you wouldn't want to do that here either. Now, I've been hinting at this a little bit, but I want to talk to you about skills. So I could, to be honest, do another entire video on skills, but skills are something that are very, very important. A lot of people loosely equate them to AI agents. I want to explain what the difference is between both of them and how you can actually utilize this. So let's get out of this project for just a minute, because I want to show you what this skills means and how you can use it specifically in the context of Claude projects. So skills were created by Claude back in 2025, and I think it actually adds a very, very positive dimension to what Claude can do. Essentially, these are persistent modular configurations that you can refer back to again and again, and that determines what Claude will do for you. For example, if I show you the skills that I have within Claude, you will see, let's go back to this settings and we'll jump into capabilities and customize, and you can see different kind of skills that I'm using right now. So for example, I've got a bit of counsel that I'm using right over here. I've got Facebook profile posts. If I ever want to create Facebook profile posts, I've got a special skill for that. I've got one for creating email campaigns for me, which automatically get loaded up into my autoresponder. I've got one for first principle thinking. Like if I'm struggling sometimes and if I'm not clear about how to overcome certain obstacles, I use the first principle thinking to get through it. And then Claude has this by default skill creator as well. If you Google, you are going to find tons of different skills available and ready to use. For example, I know that on GitHub, you can find a full combination of like 30 different skills that are available if you wanted to just go ahead and use those. So for example, there's like a bunch of things over here. The only caveat, and this is an important one that I'm going to give to you, is if you're going to download and use some skills from an external place, just be careful, because 80-90% of them are okay, but some of them might not be okay because they might leak your data back to the creator of those skills by design, not by accident, but by design. Some people also use that to steal keys, for example. This is where the likes of OpenClaw, for example, fail, because they can't differentiate between what is actually like clean and what is not. So they just take anything they can get to improve themselves. And that means sometimes they get this unsuspecting skill files that actually have like Trojan horses built into them. Same rule as always, don't download any skill the way you wouldn't download any random software onto your computer, because if you download a skill and use it randomly, it can cause problems. What I always advise is when you actually look at a skill, just spend a little bit of time understanding what it does. You can also upload that back into Claude and say, hey, I want to use this. Is there any red flag with this that I should be aware of? Can you spot any security vulnerabilities that means I shouldn't use them, right? And Claude's going to warn you if it sees something that, hey, it might be leaking your data outside. So that's a very good thing to do. But I want to explain again how skills actually work. So think about you trying to do a specific thing. So maybe you're trying to write a blog post in the simplest method, right? So you're trying to write a blog post, or maybe you're trying to create a social media post. A skill is basically an SOP, a standard operating procedure. So it will systemize the entire thing for you. So maybe you're process of writing a blog post involves doing a bit of research, reading the top 10 blog posts, extracting the key points, building a structure, then writing it out, then improving it for SEO and all those things. So you can build one massive skill that does all of those things, which is great. Like, that's fantastic, because anytime you call that skill in the future, I'm going to show you how to call skills, it will do that for you, right? In one shot, it will create that for you. But what I often do is, instead of creating a massive SOP that does one single thing, I create a modular SOP. So there's one, for example, for research, there's one for extraction, there's one for content creation, there's one for judgment, so it checks, right? And then there's one for, let's say, publishing. So just to give you that example as well, publishing. So now I have these 5 agents that are working one after the other. So when you do that, what happens is you can build a bigger agent, a macro agent. So let's say we call it macro agent, that when you invoke, it calls these agents one by one. So macro agent says to research agent, hey, like, go do this. And then extraction agent does its thing. And content creation agent does its thing. Some of them sometimes can also work in parallel if there's tasks that don't require dependencies. But then they work one after the other. And once you do that, you can then, for example, in this case, also ask the judgment agent to like judge. And if it's not good enough, then the macro agent will send it back to the content creation, say, hey, go fix these things. Or you can have another agent here for fixing, right? So it'll fix that. And then loop will keep on going until the content is where it needs to be. And then publishing agent will publish it, for example, on WordPress or wherever else you want to publish it. So when you do a process like this, it makes it quite easy to use these elements in the future as well. So you can use a research agent, sub-agent, for example, elsewhere for something else. Maybe you're doing YouTube content creation, then the research agent can be utilized there as well. So you don't need to create a lot of agents all the time. You can reuse the stuff that you had before, which again goes into modular way of thinking. So if there's something that you do, instead of trying to shove it into a big process, you modularize it so you can reuse it later in different parts of your business as well. Now, the other caveat here, the reason why I'm saying this is essential is because Claude has a limit on the number of skills you can have, skill files. I think it's limited to 30 or 50, I'm not entirely sure. So if you have too many, you're going to have to remove some of them. So don't add too many, because if you add too many, it means you're going to fill up your Claude skills folder, and then you'll have to just replace some of them. Now, having said that, I've talked about skills, but a lot of people equate skills to agents. So just as I showed you this macro agent, what people essentially say is that you've got a macro agent that calls a research agent, then that goes into extraction agent, then content creation agent, judge agent. It's nothing else. These skills files are essentially agents. The beauty of this setup is that you can extract this, take them out of Claude, use them somewhere else if you wanted to. You can take them to ChatGPT, you can utilize them in many different ways, even outside of Claude. So when you're building stuff out, especially for personal use, instead of trying to turn them into apps, desktop-based or software-based, I want you to think if you can accomplish the same thing using these skills. And the cool thing is I'm going to show you a little bit when we go discuss like these kind of connectors and other things. You can actually have skills, actually use connectors like, hey, go grab leads from Apollo, or go grab my tasks from Asana, or go check my meetings or Google Calendar. So your skills can do all those things as well on your behalf inside of Claude. And again, we're going to discuss this more as we move forward. But this is very important to point out that when you build skills, try and build them in a reusable way so that you can reuse parts of them for something else in the future as well. That's going to allow you to utilize them in the future as well. And adding a skill is very easy. So just going back to skills here, when you get a skill file, you can either ask within Claude Code to like extract those from GitHub, and Claude will do that for you, or you just go into connectors, I think capabilities, customize, and then you are able to essentially just upload a skill. You can even write skill instructions. You can even create a skill with Claude if you want to do your own. So for example, what I've often done in the past is I've taken a YouTube video, I've created a transcript of it, I've fed that into a Claude, and I've said, turn this into a skill. Right? That's a very hands-off way of doing it, but Claude's been able to do that as well. Challenge arises when you have to do dependencies on other things. For example, I showed you Asana, I showed you Apollo, but again, all those can be overcome by using connectors. We'll talk about connectors in another video. I just want you to understand what skills are and how some people equate them to agents, but there's really not much difference between them. And again, when you start to use those in the context of projects, let's say if I go into Neil's brain clone, All I have to do is type this, so the slash, and then I'm able to just go ahead and pick any of the things I want here. So for example, campaign scheduler, like, hey, I want to do a campaign for this, write it for me. And here's an important point. Typically, I do this inside of my Claude Code folder, right? But now if I do this here, it's going to keep in mind this important context that we have over here, which it didn't before. That means it's going to change the emails that it writes based on the memory, based on the instructions that I have here as well, and even based on the files. So now the emails I send out are going to read quite different because the environment around them has changed, right? So that is very, very important to understand as well, that yes, your skills can exist normally in a normal Claude environment, but as soon as you start using them within a project folder, the parameters change. And that's a good thing, because if you want to, you can use the same skills, same agents that you have somewhere else, but now they have a bit of, let's say, constraint built around, and a bit more context built around them, and that can be really useful. And again, to me, it is really important that Claude writes in the way I write, especially when it comes to writing, or even thinks the way I think. So these instructions, these files that you upload, give it that. You could have samples of your Facebook posts, and then Claude's going to write posts that sound more like it. You can give it a bunch of source data, and Claude's going to consult that before it does any content creation for you. So all this is very, very important. But even in all this, remember, Claude is updating its memory automatically every time you are engaging with it, right? So anytime you chat with it, you push back, it learns something about you. You say, oh, I don't like this, it will update that memory for you. But typically within the project, it stays within the project context. You can again ask Claude to make sure it's updated across the entire account. Essentially, as you build these projects, they need to be smarter than they were a month before, which means that you need to actually have it learn as it goes along from you. You don't want it to just sit idly and then just, eventually get better. It should get better as it processes all the information. So that being said, all this was this particular module. We talked about Claude projects, your AI department headquarters, and next up, we're going to talk about actually cloning your CFO if you have one, or making sure that Claude can actually do a lot of your financing as well, a lot of your projections, a lot of your goals, because that's going to be useful when you're looking to decide what price point to sell things at, what's your goal, how much should you charge, and all those things. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about how to use Claude as your AI financial controller. And before I go any further, I want to give this caveat that you might be looking at it thinking, Neil, I don't really want to upload all my financial data into Claude. If that's you, that's fine. You can skip this segment. But I do feel that we kind of have to think about whether we want to exchange comfort and convenience for privacy or not. And before you come at me with your daggers and say, no, we can't do that, well, we kind of already do that with Facebook. We kind of already do that with emails that we send via Gmail, right? And we do that via anything that we do. I mean, there's a lot of news around about how the government's tracking you, so we won't go into that now. But the fact that you are using YouTube, the fact that you're using Claude AI, you are giving a part of your data to the big machines. Now, how you feel about giving your financial data is up to you, but I can tell you that basically it's not that impossible for a company like Claude or OpenAI to at least estimate how much revenue you're making or what your expenses look like, because by now they have a ton of data. Right, they have a ton of data and they've accessed all of it, and they're able to look at it and realize how exactly are you faring or how others are faring, even without you giving that information to them. So again, I'd say it's up to you how you want to proceed with that. But personally, I'm giving up that privacy for the comfort and convenience that tools like Facebook, Claude, OpenAI give to me. So it's up to you how you want to utilize this. But we have been able to use Claude to essentially take away 80% of the work that my CFO did. Now, I want to take you back a few years to when we were doing exceptionally well, when we were getting about $2 million a year in revenue. And at that time, we went out there looking for a CFO because we were like, okay, we have a ton of money in the bank. We want to make sure we use it right. We want to understand basically what our runway looks like, what our projections look like, and all those things. So we went out there looking for a CFO, and they weren't cheap. Like really good ones were at least $10,000 a month. I'm not talking even based out of San Francisco, but I'm just talking about people that work remotely, and you talk to them and they want to charge you $10K a month. Eventually, we ended up hiring someone who charges $2K a month, and he's been working with us for quite a while. But even now, I'll say that given what Claude can do, as I'm going to show you what Claude Code can do for you, you can pretty much outsource 80% of the work over to Claude, and it can do a lot of analysis, it can do a lot of data compilation for you, and it can turn that into easy to use information that you can then utilize um, within your processes that you're running. So let me go ahead and actually show you how we use Claude Code for this and how you could do that as well. Now, look, before I do go into screen share mode, there are a couple of things I want to mention to you. I think every business, no matter what scale you're at, needs to have a CFO controller, basically a financial controller, who looks at your information, not just like bookkeeping, because bookkeeping is like backward looking, like how your year went, and then you run with gut feeling. You kind of want to know where you're headed. You want to know what your projections look like. You need something that can do your monthly reporting for you. So that's something I'm going to cover in the video that follows. Then I'll talk about how you can also ask the right financial questions given all your reporting, right? So you already, if you're running your numbers, you know what that looks like. So you have questions like, hey, what should we do in this month to basically expand our revenue? How should we double? Where could we reduce our expenses and all these things? Once you build this data, once you build this project, as I'm going to show you, you are able to basically normalize those things and ask your questions from Claude as if it were actually your CFO. And I want you to run this as a separate project because that's where it's going to be most effective. And once you have that, you can do scenario planning. You can basically do decision support based on that as well. And that's going to be really useful. But having said all that, let's go watch this. And I'm going to talk about how you can make sure to keep this up to date at all times so you never run out of context. Now, as you've seen my videos before, I typically talk about using Claude Code when you're working within your folders, and it does tend to work really well. But for this one, we're going to use Claude Projects, and I think Claude Projects is great because the data that you build in here could then be shared with other people in the team as well if you wanted to. But then, to be honest, it all lives in a specific way within your Claude account, so you can just come back and query it whenever you want. You can have it update things for you as and when you need. So I'm going to explain to you how you can build this out for yourself and how you can use it regardless of what kind of business you're running. So in step number 1, we're going to build out a CFO brain inside of Claude Projects. The mistake that most people make with the AI financial setup is that they treat it like Google. They just ask questions and hope to get the right answer. But as real CFO doesn't work that way. They spend time learning your business first. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So let me go ahead and build a new project. And this will be our KVT CFO. Now, of course, just so you know, I'm not going to show you my real business data. So I'm going to blur some things out, but the concept still stands. And again, I want to repeat this. You can do this regardless of what kind of business you have or what kind of industry you are in. So let's give some description and then we'll move into the next step. So the skeleton of our project is ready. So instead of using Claude like Google, we're going to go ahead and paste this prompt. And just so you know, you can also find this prompt underneath this video. So make sure you use this when you are starting to build out your AI CFO brain. So I'll read this out to you. I'm building a CFO brain inside this Claude project so it can act as my dedicated financial advisor going forward. Before it can do that properly, I needed to really understand my business. Your job right now is to interview me to gather that context and ask me questions below one at a time. Wait for my answer before moving on to the next one. If something I say needs clarification, ask me one follow-up question before moving on. Keep it conversational. This should feel like a proper conversation, not a form filling in. So again, the reason why you don't want to fill this as a form is because when you actually are being interviewed by someone, you're more likely to recollect more facts and talk in a more normal way. But if you have to fill a form, you're only going to handpick specific information. And honestly, you're going to leave some important nuances out. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to let Claude interview us through this process. And as it does that, it's going to help build a CFO brain for us. So I'm going to answer these questions. Now, I'm going to, of course, use voice to text because that's what I do. You can do that right here as well, but you can choose whatever works for you. Let me answer these questions. I'll show you answer to a few of those, and then I'm going to go ahead and answer all of them, and I'll show you what the CFO brain in the end looks like. So I've answered the question, and again, you can pause the video and see it if you'd like to, but now it's cross-questioning me. And again, this is why you don't want to fill this like a form, because you want to make sure that Claude in this case really engages you and asks you everything it needs to build out this brain. So let's look at this. one follow-up before we move on. When you launch these particular products, how does the money work? Are you taking a revenue share, flat fee? Very, very important questions. So let me go ahead and answer those for it as well. Okay, so let's go with the next question. Let's talk about the shape of the business month to month. What does a strong month look like for you in numbers, and what does a bad month look like? So I'll give basically a very, very vulnerable answer, and that's an important one. Okay, so vulnerably, I've answered those questions as well. And again, you want to be as open as you possibly can, because a CFO should know everything about your business. What you don't want to do is kind of lie at this point. There's no vanity, there's no ego, because if you lie, if you're vain about it, it's only going to fall back in your face and it's only going to hurt you. So of course, at this point, if you want to go back and look at your numbers to get a better clarity and grip on what you're doing, that's a good thing. So quick follow-up, is 150K figure your share after the partner split? So is that total gross before you divide anything? So I'm going to answer that question too. It's total gross before I divide anything. So basically this is total sales in a month. Done. So let's go ahead. And then again, it's going to crunch that information and hopefully just say, let's go on to the next question. You're effectively working with 50K on a good month and 25K on a bad one before your own costs come out. That's a much tighter window than top line suggests. Let's look at what's going out the door regardless of revenue. So let me answer that one as well. So I've answered some other questions as well, but note that the real information will come in when you actually give it some of your data. So this is where it's really going to start to make sense. Now, I'm going to not show you all the other answers I'm doing then, because honestly, it's going to be a boring process for you. But this is what you got to do. It's going to take you some time to set up this CFO brain clone, but once you have, it's going to make your life so much better moving forward. And again, one thing to remember is that as the CFO learns, it's going to update this brain at all times as well. So that is actually quite useful for you. So let me take you off screen, bring you back once I have done all the answers, and I'll show you what the outcome then looks like. Now, I just want to pause for a second, rather pause and bring you back and explain this to you. So my business is actually very, very complicated the way it's structured, right? So I want to show you this as well, because I think it's important to mention, because you might be watching this video and you'll say, Neil, it's not going to work for me because my business is really complicated. Let me show you how mine is set up. So the way it's set up is that I have one big holding company on the top, right? So this holding company actually pays out salaries for me and my business partner, right? So I'm going to put their salary for me and my business partner. Now, then underneath that, we have multiple companies. So one company is KV Social, which is the launch and basically training arm. Then we have Melvier, which is another one. Then we have underneath that Gorilla AI, right? So we have multiple companies under this. And just to show you, like, it is super complicated. So all of the revenues that is made from that basically goes back into Holdco. All the revenues made from Melvier goes back into Holdco. But from Content Gorilla or Gorilla AI, only about 30% of the revenue goes to us, 70% goes to the other person who's working with us in these companies. And then there's employees too. So we've got about, I think I remember right, like 15 or so employees, right? Some of them are employed full-time by Melvier, and then some of them are employed full-time by Gorilla AI. But then we have some employees, especially in admin work, that are basically employed by all of these, right? And then we think about costs such as, we pay for a platform called PayKickstart, and that's about $1,500 a year. So even there's some platforms that are paid fully by Gorilla AI, some platforms paid fully by Melvier, some platforms are paid fully by KV Social, right? So there's all of that. But then there's some that are paid by all of them. So this is very, very important point to mention, because there's a lot of different layers to this business. And you might look at it and think, okay, Neil, like my business is like it's more complicated than that. But we're still trying to simplify it so that the CFO brain can understand all of it and implement all of it for ourselves. So again, I want to repeat this. When you are looking to explain all these things to the brain clone, you want to be as clear as possible. And if any of these questions doesn't really cover things like these, it's okay to mention that as an add-on when you're answering these questions, so that CFO brain can understand the context of your business fully. Again, this is what we're doing. We're trying to explain the context of our business as much as possible. And you might think like you have a very elaborate, unique context, but trust me, it's not any more elaborate than, say, someone like Musk. And if Musk can do it, if I can do it, so can you. So I have answered all the questions now. To be honest, it didn't take very long. I think there were just a few back and forth. This took me about 10 or 15 minutes, and hopefully this is enough to put a full context of what our CFO would look like. And at some point, what I'm going to do once I have this brain clearing for the CFO ready is I'm also going to dump the sample files that we have, so it's able to understand basically how everything is structured, especially in the context of last year's, because last year's files are all complete. And then again, once all of that is ready, once our whole ecosystem for the CFO brain is ready, then we can start uploading basically month to month data, raw data, and the CFO will be able to categorize it and will be able to assess it, report on it, and then allow us to use it better moving forward. So let me bring you back once we have a brain clone prepared for this CFO, and so you have better idea of what this is going to look like for yourself. All right, so here we go. Now it has basically created an entire brain clone of our business. So it's basically describing everything. And again, this is more recent. This is based on what's happening right now. And this is really, really good. So I'm going to download this one because we're going to use it later, but you can also go ahead and add it to this project. So it lives on, and this is something then you're able to use in the future as well. Like there you go. It is now added to our project. And this is something that can be called upon whenever Claude is trying to build an assessment. Now let's go back and see what it says as well on top of that. So it says, okay, you can still share your data that you have. So the actual data, and samples will help, but it's put together this entire structure. So this is pretty good. And yeah, this is nice. So I'm going to share my reports in this. Now I'm going to dump my reports, and then I'm going to see what assessment it comes back with. So I'm going to use 2025 numbers because they're complete. There's nothing missing in those. And there's again, I'm going to take multiple companies and I'm going to put them all in here, and we'll see what Claude says on top of that. And again, this process, by the way, is all just me feeding data into this so that it's able to understand more of what I do. And again, just to remind you, as you're doing this, as you're building this out, Claude will very precisely pinpoint your own business. So for example, if you're a coach, it will tell you that, okay, your revenue stream might be like one-on-one packages, group programs. It'll understand what you do. If you're a high ticket seller, it will tell you what your key metrics are. If you're an agency owner, it will tell you what your fixed costs are. And again, it's not making decisions on your behalf yet. It's only giving you that information dump, which is very useful. So let me go ahead, upload some files, and I'll show you what happens next. So here we go. So attached are our files from 2025. This will give you clear information of how our business is doing and what our costs are. Could you analyze them in full? And if you need to, you can update the business context. Or I could say you can update the CFO brain context. So we're going to give it that. And again, this is very, very important because all the data is useless. All the information that you give is useless if it's not actually backed by data. So we're going to let Claude do its thing onto all our data. And it's not a bad idea to also upload this into the project memory so it can refer back to it whenever it needs to. So I'm going to do this as well. Let's go ahead and add these in. So now it's able to refer back to them and use them whenever it needs to build out something similar in the future. Because I could simply ask it to build out something similar for Gorilla AI or for MailView or for KV Social, and then composite one for KV Technology once we have the raw data from the month available. So it's digging into it. I will let it do that, and I'll bring you back as soon as it's finished the process. Okay, so here we go. Now look, this is of course my actual raw data. So you can see what it says. 2025 was a loss year. The business operationally viable but structurally underwater due to partner draws exceeding pre-draw profits. The 10K month target was never achieved, not once in 2025. It was actually. I think I'll have to check and see what it's saying. The real numbers, the bottom line, KVT recorded a net loss of 31K for the full year against a target of 120K. That's a gap of nearly 151K. Now, again, bear in mind that we are withdrawing salaries and we are withdrawing profits as well. So there's that. You hit profit in 4 out of 12 months, which is true, but there's an important distinction. Before Neil and Stephen's non-KVT salary draws, the business generated 46K in pre-draw profit. So operationally in the black, but because we draw the money out, it goes in red. Entity by entity, the engine, but sputtering in Q4 revenue. So it tells you basically exactly how it went. Now, this is very, very good information. And again, this is something that my CFO would give to me. And, it will take him hours and hours of time to combine. Gorilla AI, your quiet best performer, hamstring by 30% rule. But this is what it looks like. MailView finally turning, but 2025 was still a drag. The 100K gross revenue target, reality check, is this. And then you can see 3 biggest issues and what to do about it. Priority order, immediate this month, investigate. This one, I think this one, because there was a lot of back pay, so it's asking us to check. Updated CFO context, what changes based on the data. So the context document was built on estimates, how corrections from actual 2025 data, right? The 100K gross target is the right aspiration, but the business averaged 40K net sales in 2025. the true break-even net sales is around 55 to 60. But the thing is, like, the 100K gross is not really kind of, we don't calculate gross in our spreadsheets, right? We calculate net, so it's a little bit different. If I show you our gross in last year, let me bring that up as well. So the gross in last year was 661, and again, this is an external app that we use to look at our data as well. And to be honest, this was fine, but of course, as you can see, there were some months that were good, some months that were not. Right over. In fact, in none of the months we hit 100K. So I think Claude is right to be worried, and that is what it's asking us to fix. Now let me just look at January, for example. So let's go for custom. Actually, let's look at this year. I think that would give us a better insight. There you go. So this year so far. So in January we had 119, and as you saw in February we had 51, and as of recording this, March so far we have 29. So not great, but again, this is the kind of information that'd be good to have more consistently from Claude, right? So this is what we're looking at. And to be honest, Claude's doing a very, very good job of doing this. And this is our updated business context document. So we're going to add it to the project as well. It says it's failed, but it usually does add it. So I'm going to delete the old one because we have this one. And now again, this is very, very good, right? This is exactly what we want. So we've done step one. And now we're going to move on to step number 2. But again, just so you know, this is just insights of how we are building our AI CFO brain. If you actually want to come in and look at exactly how other people are implementing AI in their business and other parts of the business to grow their bottom line, to grow their revenue, make sure you follow the link underneath this video and join our community, AI Revenue Engine, as well. But let's go into step number 2, and this is where we start taking action. Now we're going to go ahead and build our monthly drop-in. What I mean by that is my data is now disparately spread over multiple places. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it all into one place within Claude, and then I will let it kind of crunch those numbers, give me updated reports, as well as then I can query it on those numbers as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into multiple places. I'm going to download raw files, and this is something you should be able to do yourself as well, no matter what it is you're using. A lot of these payment platforms that you're using have data available, so you can export the data out and then you can bring that in as well. So I'm going to do just that. So far I've added 3 sources of data, which is our affiliate transactions from JVZoo. There's actual JVZoo product sales, and then additional transactions from PayKickstart, another platform that we use as well. And again, just to show you this is raw data, right? I'm not cleaning this up, I'm not doing anything. You can't see this file, but this is raw data. It's just simple numbers, and we're going to let Claude do all the heavy lifting here. Now, so you know, Claude does have some limits as to how many files you can add per chat that you're chatting with, but we're going to try with 5. You may have to go down to 3 or 4, but this is the prompt that I'm going to give to you as well in the document underneath the video, and you should be using. So I'm attaching this month's financial data from I can mention from JVZoo and PayKickstart, which is majority of where our sales are recorded. You already know my business from a context document. Review all the data and give me a complete CFO monthly briefing in this format. So CFO briefing is like this. This is missing some data. I'm going to add it in the next steps. So then as you run this prompt, it's going to give you a very high level overview of kind of how your business went in that particular month. So this is for me in January 2025. It's going to read all those documents, and it's going to come back with an analysis that's going to tell me very easily how this went. And then in the next step, I can ask it to create those reports in the style that we have for 2025 as well. And I can ask it to create a separate report per company, because that is something that I need. And as it creates a separate report per company, this is going to be very useful, because now I don't have to rely on someone else building those reports out for me. And it's going to be able to update these reports every month when I add new data in. Now look, it's created a verdict for us, but it says it's the best revenue month in KV Technologies recorded history, and you're reading incomplete data. The OmniMint launched, JVZoo sales, it kind of walks through breakdown of everything, right? So how did the specific things go? And this is pretty good. And let me look at all of this. Okay, so it's showing basically pretty good sales, which I don't know if you remember when we looked at our Butler account, which is quite the same. So this is really good, but this is confirmed incomplete data. And let's look at all of this. So this is fine. And cost summaries I'm missing at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and update the cost summaries as well. And then we'll have a better idea. So for cost summaries, what I need to do is I need to upload my credit card statements or bank account statements. And remember, there's going to be overlaps in certain places as well, which we need to warn this against as well. So honestly, the information given by Claude so far is pretty good, but I have more data that I wanted to go through. So I'm going to ask it to do just that. And this will give us a complete picture, more or less, between the income and the expenditure. So this is all you need to do to basically build out these kind of reports and have your CFO compile everything instead of paying someone else to do so. Of course, you can always have someone look over the data and make sure it all makes sense, make sure it all works out with each other. But this by far is one of the easiest ways to set up your CFO brain clone and use that as well. But let's wait for the data and I'll show you how realistic it actually is compared to our real data that we did manually. Okay, so we now have updated data and let's look at it. It's still saying JV0 is definitely the best month. Revenue summary is this, which is pretty much as before, and it's pointing out what products belong to what entities as well, which is useful to know because if something isn't clear, I can correct it. And honestly, it's got pretty much everything down except for funnel view, so I'm going to correct that. But pretty much everything is otherwise on track, as you can see, except for Kaiview again being part of Melview. So I'm going to go fix that as well. But looking at this, KV Social was this much revenue. That's just the net revenue. And then cost summary as well as looking at the entire payroll. And then it's looking at credit card spend. So it's working that out as well. It's fantastic. So unclassified is like 23K, but that's the withdrawal basically, which is like, you know, the profit sharing between me and my business partner, platform fee, fixable variable spend. Profit summary, scenario A, it's already counted, and this is good. So it says basically that you made about net profit of 32K, right? That was a January number that it eventually came up with for KV Technology. Now, I'm going to look at it and tell you exactly how much we made in KV Technology net profit that month. That's after paying like all salaries, including my partner's salary. So let me go check that number out. So we made about $29,000 in net profit. What's probably missing from here is a few other expenses that was paid by places like Wise, because we use Wise as well, so I didn't upload those. So to be honest with you, it's pretty much on track. Like there's a small margin of error, but that is only because I haven't given it all the data, but this is pretty good. And it's explaining what worked, what didn't work. It's giving full details into what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, right? So the question you should be asking is, what is the true Gorilla AI contribution to KVT? Has anything changed? So it's asking for that clarification and identify that this withdrawal was again like, you know, payouts. So that's fine. Kill or justify every software subscription above 100 a month. So it's saying that basically run it through all these things and work out exactly where you're spending too much. Open the Gorilla AI renegotiation right now so you can kind of go back to Gorilla AI partner and talk about this again. So this is really good. And this all again is step number 2. But what I can also ask is I can also ask it to build out the budget sheet. So let me ask it to do just that for KV Social in the same format that we have the 2025 budget sheet, and we'll look at what it does. So again, a simple prompt to ask it to build out the KV Social budget sheet based on how 2026 January went, and it's going to build this out as well. Now, just so you know, some insights for you as it's building this. If you are unsure as to what to kind of ask, you're able to use some of the prompts I'm going to share with you as well, which again, I will be available underneath this video for you to take and use as your own. So if you're doing scenario planning, especially if the previous month went really well or, you know, current month didn't go very well, you can ask it questions like this. If my biggest revenue stream dropped by 30% next month, so if my launch, which actually did happen to us, it doesn't do as well, walk me through the exact impact. What cost can I flex? What can't I touch? And what should I do in the next 30 days if that happens? And there's more. Let me just share this with you as well. So pattern recognition. So you could say, looking at everything you know about my business in this month's data, what pattern do you see that I'm probably not paying attention to? Where am I drifting without realizing it? Or the pricing and profit. Based on my current cost structure and revenue mix, where is the highest leverage place to improve my profit margin, raise prices, cut costs, or shift focus to a different revenue stream? Give me honest ideas. And again, there's also goal reality check, which is my goal is, you know, let's say, again, 10,000 a month, I want to consistently maintain that, or 20,000 a month. Based on my current trajectory and what you know about my business, is that realistic? If yes, what do I need to protect? If no, what needs to change and by how much? So by just doing this, basically, you are able to question Claude and kind of have it build all this stuff for you so it's able to guide you as exactly your CFO. And look, the reason why I like this so much is because typically if you had a CFO in the past that you'd have to ask, you'd pay them $10,000 a month and they would give you the exact same answers. But now we have AI doing all of that for you. And this you can do whenever you want. So even in the middle of the month, if you want to just come and upload your data, it's able to do that as well. Now, having said all that, if you wanted to automate all of this, if you really wanted to be push buttons, so it can work for you, you can of course use services like Putler that we have, but even then again, Putler is not going to give you a deep drill down of your profits, because only you know your cost, right? You can do that. The other alternative for you is to build an automation using N8N. So when you build out an N8N automation, you can basically have your income sources and you can have your expenses sources every single day being logged into this sort of black box, which you can build using N8N. And then N8N will essentially give you a clear picture of what your business is doing every single day. So again, as long as the sources that you're using have APIs, as long as you can tunnel in and get that data back in, you can quite easily estimate income and expenses, or actually accurately estimate income and expenses, run them through a black box where all the calculation happens, exactly what Claude's doing right now, and it will give you a full picture. Of course, in certain cases, when you don't have that data available, I mean, things are getting better, things are changing and improving as it goes along. But in case you don't have that data on a daily basis available via APIs, you're going to have to put that into at least a Google Sheet from where that data is picked up automatically and utilized. So it just comes down to what kind of automation you want to build for yourself and what kind of connectors you have in place. Okay, so once you've done all these things, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go ahead and update this folder every single month. So ideally, you can just start by having a year, and then within that you have months like January, February, March, April, and every month you get your statements, your files, your sales data, whatever it is, you can dump it all into one place. And again, given the same prompts, have Claude go through everything to create your monthly reports. And once you're done with that, go to Claude and also ask it to basically assess how this last month went based on projections, and what are the expectations, what went wrong, what went right, what it thinks you should do next month to make sure you don't miss those goals. Now, of course, the thing is, you can take all this information and also work on this in the middle of the month. But if you really want to just get information once a month, if you don't want to spend too much time on it, then this is the process you should follow. And again, I would encourage you to build this for yourself. It is a one-time thing. It's going to take you maybe a couple of hours or 3 hours to set all this up. But once you have all this set up, you only need to spend about 15 minutes every month to get a good bird's eye view on how your business is actually doing. Okay, module 6, and this is a big one. I want to be honest with you. This is where, if you do things right, you're going to end up spending most of your time, and there's a good reason for that. Building content, basically doing content marketing, is a full-time job. It is absolutely not something that should be done sort of passively. It is something we've hired people to do. In the past, we spent thousands of dollars on it every single month. Now, I literally just have a copywriter, and the only reason I have him still on my team is because I like sometimes the kind of angles he comes up with. And, if I have any extra work to give, even after we get stuff from AI, I can pass it over to him and he can look it over. So in this part of this video, I want to talk to you about content marketing, where how you can build a full complete content production system that turns one piece of content into many different pieces and maintains brand voice and sort of does all of this with minimal input requirement. So essentially, in the beginning, we're going to talk about content repurposing. And I think it's a very important concept, because a lot of people, when they think about content, they think they have to create new things all the time. They have to keep on inventing new stuff. They have to look at what's trending and talk about it. And that has a place. Don't get me wrong. If you talk about something that's trending, you're definitely going to pick up traction now. But if you create content once that is evergreen, you can use it, reuse it over and over and over again. I'll give you a case in point here. I have a friend locally who does teaching Finnish language to people. And she tells me that she publishes about approximately 20 reels on Instagram every single month. And I'm like, that sounds like a lot of work. Isn't it a lot of work? She said, well, half of those I just keep on repeating. Because if you think about major events that are coming up, and she's done some previous video around that, people don't remember a year later. There's a lot of new people that have come in. So she just repurposes that old content, publishes again, and it gets traction. So I want to talk about AI content machine, but to begin with, basically, now I want to go into repurposing first, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't do. And I think they need to do that, because when you're building out content for multiple different places, you need to think about repurposing. So let me show you that. And once you've looked at it, I'll actually show you inside of Claude how you can implement that using connectors. And I think that's a big point as well. And if you just followed what I shared before I talked about connectors, you will see why this is also an important part of sort of creating this avalanche of content that just keeps on producing once you kick things off. So let's look at content repurposing now, and then I'll show you a much more elegant way of executing that into Claude. So how do you go about doing that? It starts with having a content strategy, right? And what the content strategy is depends on what your end goal is with something. So what is your end goal right over here? And where are you right now, right? So where are you right now? Now, you could, of course, think of this end goal in terms of, your 5-year plan, 2-year plans, as we've talked about before as well. I think it's okay to just think of end goal 6 months from now, because typically that's enough. I think 6 months for a life cycle of a piece of content is already pretty good. So you can say, you can think of 6 months, or you can just even think of a month if that works for you. But let's say I'll show you exactly what I mean. So let's say if my goal with the school community is to have 1,000 members in 6 months' time, right? That is my singular goal, my singular vision that I'm working on right now. It could be a revenue goal too. For you, it might be that, hey, I want to get to 20K a month. I want to get to 50K a month, or I want to save up like 16 hours of my time every week so I can dedicate that to volunteer work, to my family, to my pets, whatever it is you choose to do, right? So pick out a goal, basically, right? Then start working backwards to where you are right now. And again, in this case, this could apply to almost anything in your life, but in this specific case, we're looking at content creation only, right? So when I say my goal is to get 1,000 members in school community, I'm going to look at content creation as a vehicle to do so. Okay, as a vehicle to do so. So let's say my end goal is basically content creation, growing a school community to 1,000 members. And then I want to estimate what I need to do to basically create this content. Now, look, I want to start by saying this as well, that every business is nothing but a math equation. The better you understand the math behind what it is you want to do, the clearer the outcome will become, the easier it will make it for you to get there. So if my goal is I want to have 1,000 members in my school community, how do I get to that goal? What steps do I have to take to get to that goal? And this is where knowing, like having some data helps, but even if you don't, you can estimate, you can basically theorize it. And let's say you decide, in my case, I've decided, so I'm going to use myself as a case that it's easiest. So I've decided that I'm going to be producing YouTube videos. So I'm going to make this sign here. So I'm going to be producing YouTube videos, and I'm going to do 2 of those videos a week, right? And I'm going to use that to basically get 1,000 members to my group. So 2 videos a week in 6 months, that's 26 weeks. That gives us about 52 videos altogether, right? Based on my current stats, based on what I'm seeing right now, this is what I've noticed. 100 views on a YouTube video, a long form YouTube video, will give me about 3 registrants, right? So again, just basic math. 100 views on a video will give me about 3 registrants. I'm not even talking about paid at the moment. Like that's not as big a concern for me, because I'm going to build that over time. That's fine. That's the data that I have. Now, that's just one source. What I also want to do is I want to do YouTube shorts. So these are like long videos, right? I want to do shorts on YouTube. Then I want to do shorts on TikTok, right? I want to do shorts on Instagram. And right now, again, I'm going to show you this in the later part of the video. I just repurpose a lot of content, so it's easy, right? And then I want to utilize my email newsletter. Oh, actually, let's say I want to do shorts on LinkedIn as well. And I want to do shorts on Facebook as well. So I want to do shorts on all these different places, different channels. And you can quite easily take a big video, cut it into shorts. We can discuss that later as well in this video. But that's what I want to do, right? Now, I can tell you this from experience, and this is, if you don't know, you can research this. But if you look at your short videos, they're not going to have the same kind of conversion rate for subscribers. So if 100 views, for example, over here, I'll say views, gives me 3 registrations on a long video, chances are that maybe triple of this, so I'd say 100 views here will give me, actually, let's say more like 500 views, I would say, will give me 1 registration. And that looks really bad, right? But again, it's like we're dealing with numbers here, because I can take one video, which is 20 minutes long. I can create literally 15 shorts out of it. So it's easy. And if I dump those 15 shorts into, let's say, YouTube, those 15 shorts collectively can get maybe, let's say, if they don't do well, they can get 5,000 views. And from that 5,000 views, I can extract 10 registrants, right? So that's just like me showing you mathematically what's possible. Once you put it out there, once you run the data, you'll find different numbers. And this would be unique to your business too, by the way. So I'm not just saying everyone needs to grow their school community. I'm just showing you what I'm doing right now, because I want to be real about it. So if I do this everywhere, and somehow on TikTok, on Instagram, I have like limitations as to how much views I'm getting right now. It's like, it's bottleneck, but whatever. Let's say, if I do this, and if I essentially take, 15 plus 15, 30 videos every week from these 2 long videos that I've done. I extract 30 videos every single week. I can get about 10,000 visitors, and from that I can get about 20 registrations. So altogether, with just these videos alone, I can get 6 here and 20 here. So I can get 26 registrations a week using long videos alone, and then shorts out of it. Remember, my goal is 1,000. So if I have 6 months, let's do the math here. What is 1,000 by 6? 1,000 by 6 is 166. Like, I need 166 registrants a week to hit that number. And with 26 registrants a week, I'm going to get to, in 6 months' time, I'm going to get 676 registrants. My goal is 1,000, so I'm clearly like missing some here, right? I'm missing about 324 registrants. So what do I do for that? This is where content multiplication comes in really handy. So look, I've already taken like the long form YouTube videos that I'm doing and turned those into short videos. So this is what you do. You take a long piece of content that you have created. So you take, a long video that you have created. This is, let's say, about 20-minute long video that you've done, for example. And it's okay if you don't want to record videos. Like, I'll talk about other ways to content repurpose as well. You can take, you can basically extract, like, let's say 15 shorts out of this, some good, some not so good. You can, if you want to be strict on quality, you'll get essentially, 10 shorts out of it. That's fine. Then you can take that same video and you could literally get it transcribed. You can plug that into Claude, for example, and you can turn that into ebook, which could become your lead magnet, right? So this is your lead magnet. You can take the same ebook, you can take the same transcript and turn that into tweets, like X threads, basically, right? So you can go ahead and post on X as well. You can X plus threads. So like threads being another social network that you can utilize for this. You can take the same post. You can take the same transcript and then extract useful information out of it that you could post on Reddit. You could write a blog post about it if you want to do. You can go ahead and you can even answer questions on Quora from it. Basically, anywhere where you can make a contribution, you can do so. Now, this is very, very important to mention. Again, an aside is like when you're building business in the AI age, it's very easy now to build software, at least like start building a software. I think it's very difficult to actually finish it, but it's very easy to start building a software. So where you're going to see an edge is when you are good at distribution. So if you can spend, I would say, about 80% time on distribution and 20% on creating, you're going to win. You're going to crush anyone else out there. But this is what content repurposing actually is take the same piece of content and then multiply it many, many times. So let's look at the timeline, what this looks like, right? So you make this long video and you post it on the 1st of the month, right? Then you get 15 shorts out of it. And then you maybe post like 2 shorts every day. So that covers you from the 1st till about like 9th of the month, because that's like 15 shorts. Let's say 8th of the month, right? You publish the ebook, right? You publish that ebook on the 9th. Okay. That's, you could go and publish it in places like Scribd. You can do a lot of cool things with that as well. Then you take that transcript and you turn that into like 15 different social media posts, like just for X and just for threads, and you paste them concurrently, one every day. So now you go from the 9th all the way to about 23rd of the month, right? Every day you're basically making one post on Twitter, one post on threads. That's all you're doing. Then you take 3 days to actively go ahead and engage on Reddit about that particular topic, video topic. Right? So that takes you until 26th approximately. Then you make a blog post that takes you to 27th. You go to Quora and do this for another 2 days. So that takes you up to like 29th. And then maybe you put in like another couple of things that you can do. Maybe you make a Facebook post this time. Maybe, and by the way, when I said 15 shorts, I'm talking about 15 shorts in 5 different places. So now you're getting like 75 shorts out there very, very quickly. So that's what we do. Effectively, right? So if you want to see, I'll give you an example. So let's go into YouTube right now and I'll just show you behind the scenes what that actually looks like for me at the moment. So I'll go into YouTube Studio, then I'll go into my content, then I'll go into a video that I had previously done. So let's look at this one. 1 second. 7 AI mistakes that are costing you hours every week, right? That's a long video. That's about 17 minutes long. Then if I go to shorts, AI isn't working. Stop making these 7 mistakes. Stop using AI like Google. Identity shift toy versus business tool. Now, obviously, these shorts are not doing too well for me at the moment, and that's something I need to go and diagnose and fix. But you can see, like, all together, I'm still getting views on those, right? Okay, so as you work on this, I want you to think about two things. What kind of content are you comfortable creating to begin with? And then what kind of content do you actually need? Look, you might be that kind of person who doesn't want AI to create the source content, and that is perfectly fine. So I know people, for example, who say they want to script and create their entire YouTube video themselves, or there are people who want to do an entire blog post themselves, or they say they want to write an email themselves. That's perfectly fine. If that is what you want to do, if that is what you want to create from scratch, that is perfectly fine. I'll show you my workflow that I use, and then I'll explain why that works for me. But again, it's entirely up to you how you want to construct yours. But even before I talk about what kind of content can you create, I want to talk about sources or ideas, because this is typically how I work when I'm producing content. So there was a time when I was writing all the content from scratch by hand, and that was okay, but I've stopped doing that now because I've gotten so good at training up AI to speak in my voice, to present things the way I present, that it's enough for me to give it sources. Now, I'm not saying I give it random sources and say, okay, build something out of this, but what I actually do is I give it some foundational ideas about the content that I'm trying to create. So let's say if I want to record a video like this one, I'll actually tell you the process I envisioned for creating a video like this. First, I use Notebook LM. I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes. But I use Notebook LM to give it a bunch of different sources around Claude. Like, I literally had to feed in 20 different sources around Claude to basically explain different kind of content that exists out there on the most comprehensive Claude course. So I gave it 20 different sources, right? And based on those 20 different sources, I asked it to create an outline for content. So it gave me an outline for content. I actually then took that outline from Notebook, fed it back into Claude, and asked Claude to do some more research, figure out if there's any gaps. And the result of that was this video that you're watching. Not the entire script, of course. I'm just saying it as I see it. I'm not looking at a script, but I'm just saying as I think of it. But I asked Notebook LM and then Claude to basically create an outline for me, right? So what I'm saying is that even before I started recording this video content, which is what I'm doing as I'm going along, I did a lot of preliminary research. But thanks to AI, that research can be sped up, it can be automated, it can be scaled up as much as you want. So what this gave me was an outline document, which is, I'm looking at it, about 37 pages long, but that's enough to make like a 2, 3, 4 hour video, which is what we're doing here right now. So think about, even before what kind of content you can create, how do you do your research? A lot of people tend to go to the library, they read books, they read research papers, they do a lot of different things. You figure out what works for you, and then you create that first piece of content that is truly yours. Now, you can actually use AI to script the entire thing. I've done that in the past where I've scripted the entire video. I've even scripted entire webinars, and I'm just presented to the camera like this, right? It can seem a little bit inauthentic, but I think it's still better than not doing it. So it's okay. You do what you want to do, what you feel comfortable with. But then once you create this kind of content, it could be video content, it could be written content, it could be emails, social media posts, whatever you want, basically, that gives you the ability to then go ahead and repurpose it as much as you want. So again, your sources that basically define what you're going to create, then the kind of content that you can create, and then finally what kind of content that you need thereafter. So for every video that we create, for example, just like how I showed you, we have a full pipeline that's going to turn this into, for example, Facebook posts, right? So from this video, we're going to have Facebook posts. Then from there, we're also going to have, in parallel to that, we're going to have LinkedIn posts. We're going to have tweets, right? We're going to have Instagram posts, mostly images. Then I'm also going to take this video and then compress it, create short videos out of it for YouTube. We're going to have that content for Instagram, which is different from the IG post that I just showed you. We're going to have content for TikTok, and I also post that content on LinkedIn as well. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I also post it on Facebook. Again, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And again, these are just some ideas. If you want to stretch it from there, you can create Medium posts. If you're willing to put a little bit of effort in, you can make Pinterest posts. And then you can also create content for Reddit, answering people's questions based on the content that you have. So again, the key thing I want to emphasize here, that your one piece of content, even if it's a 15-minute long video that you've created or a 1,000-word essay that you've written, whatever you've done, can actually lead to a lot of different things. Now, how you do that inside Claude determines your speed of execution. So what I have done for myself, and this is something we're expanding to commercialize eventually, is we've built an AI content repurposing engine, right? So I'll just show you the skeletons of what that looks like as a concept, but this is something you can build for yourself in Claude as well, or go find something else that exists. But essentially, this is what needs to happen. You upload a video or a long piece of article, whatever it is, transcription, whatever it is you're doing, and then you set a process that automatically goes out there and creates all of this, like everything that you need, and automatically publishes as well in an order, right? I forgot to mention emails here, but like emails go there too, but I often don't send like just content-based emails to my list. It's usually promotion-based emails. So I'm telling you all this because a lot of people tend to think, hey, we need to like now do Facebook posts, we need to do LinkedIn posts and this and that. But if you do this right, what you can end up doing with something like Claude is you end up building an entire calendar that basically repeats month after month, right? So let's say you've got, hypothetically, I'm just going to build something like this with 28 days, hopefully. Yeah. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down to 28. And again, like 31 days. But you can have a Facebook post going out on day 1. You can have a YouTube short going out on day 2, a LinkedIn video going out on day 3, LinkedIn text going out on day 4, and you can just keep on doing it for every new piece of content that you publish, right? This is the important point that I'm trying to tell you. You can amplify each piece of content into 30 shorter posts. And then if you're publishing one major piece every week, or even if you're publishing one major piece every 2 weeks, you've still got 60 pieces of content or 120 pieces of content that are doing the heavy lifting for you. And again, all these short pieces of content are not going to make you money directly. They're not going to bring you sales directly, but they're going to build awareness for your audience. That is, when you're publishing this kind of content, your audience is going to look at it and they're like, yeah, this is actually pretty good. I like it because this person's, making sense about what it is they're saying. So all this to say that the work that you need to do initially is just this. The sources, collecting the sources. And again, I promise you that can be automated using, I'm going to show you Notebook LM in a second, that can be automated using Notebook LM. And then you can expand it using Claude. You can ask it to create an outline. And the hard part is you sitting down, recording something or writing something. Again, you can use AI for that. But once you're done with that, as long as you systemize everything within Claude, it can work quite easily. And I'll show you how this works as well. So of course, so far we've talked about connectors. The one thing I haven't talked about is, let me go into settings. One thing I haven't talked to you about is like capabilities. So let's go ahead and look at those as well. So 1 second. Oh, there we are. Sorry. So you've got capabilities as well where you can connect with a lot of other things outside. Claude at the moment is not in a place where it can automatically post for you on other social media platforms. But if you look at something like, I think there's a tool called Blutator, if I remember right, Blutator, right? So let me just show you this. Claude to Blutator, right? So you can actually integrate Claude with Blutator, and this is the owner of Blutator. She does amazing training on AI as well, and she talks about how you can automatically post content from Claude to LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and more, and you can do content repurposing there as well. So with these kind of systems, it is entirely possible for you to do this. Now, the way I would encourage you to do this is like this. And again, I want you to think about creating new skills. So you talk to Claude and you explain to it that, hey, I've got this long piece of content that I've created, and from this, I want you to create 5 social media posts, 5 Facebook posts, 5 LinkedIn posts, 5 tweets, whatever it is you need. And then once these are done, I want you to connect to Blutator or whatever it is you're using. You can work out those integrations there, and it's going to automatically schedule all of that for you for like the next month. And that's just one post. So all you're doing, anytime you create a new post, you start a new skill within Claude, and you can say maybe it's like social media scheduling, and it's going to write and schedule the entire thing for you on autopilot. And again, I know you're worried about AI slop. I know you're worried about content that doesn't sound like you, but this is where you use projects. This is where you train it the right way with your brain clone, with the specific instructions, so the content it creates reads and sounds more like you. And again, I want to tell you this, you don't need to rush into trying to create the content until you've fully verified it. Do it manually first, make sure it works as you want, and then you can automate it. And yeah, when it comes to short videos as well, Claude can actually, within Claude Code, create shorts for you out of the longs. And there's a lot of GitHub repositories that you can look into that as well. I have other training on that too. But the simplest way would be to using an external tool, such as, say, Opus Clip. I think it's Opus Clip and this one. And then just using their tool to turn one video into multiple short videos, right? That would be the fastest way of doing that. So again, just work on one piece of content, one long piece of content, and I promise you can multiply into 30 pieces of content for the next month using Claude. And you can use that to create Facebook posts, LinkedIn posts, tweets, Instagram posts, Medium posts, Pinterest, Reddit you got to post manually. But you can also do, if you go outside of that, you can do short videos. You can publish them on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook. And I do this all the time. I have one automation running in the background that takes my one short video and posts it into 5 different places. And that is fantastic because even though that's not going to get me subscribers and sales at a specific time, it's still going to get me engagement. It's still going to continue building awareness, which is what I want. But having said that, I want to show you Notebook LM because I think it's one of those hidden tools that I think you must use with Claude. So what I do when I come across someone who's teaching some really cool things is I go to YouTube. So I'll show you this right now. I go to YouTube and let me find one of the channels. So let's say if I go for this one, I'll go to videos and I've got an extension called Notebook LM to YouTube. If I click on that, it will automatically extract the latest 100 videos for him and 50 if you have a free Notebook LM plan. And it's going to basically build a source of truth. So remember I talked about the source of truth right over here, like what kind of content should you create? Well, it's going to build that automatically for you within minutes. Of course, you can choose to create specific content the way you want. So let's say in this case, Albert's talking about a lot of things, but I want to talk about OpenClaw. So I could just ask this, what kind of things have been discussed about OpenClaw? Could you give me a few key bullet points if I wanted to create my own video content? And this is going to basically write out OpenClaw. This is going to write out the entire key ideas that Albert is discussing, which I can take as a framework, and then I can push that into Claude, expand that framework, and then create my own video around OpenClaw. And again, just think about that. All of that, okay, luckily it's corrected my spellings. All of that, it turns into the short form content that I can post on multiple different places as videos, as text, and so on and so forth. So again, I can take this and I can go ahead and put that into Claude, expand it, and just continue building the cycle from there. So all this to say, and this is very, very important, that you can actually mostly automate most parts of these things as long as you are doing them consistently. But again, you want to make sure your brand voice is on point. And again, you do that with the brain clone, you do that with the profile clone. So anything that you create, for example, is going to sound like you. So it's very, very crucial because the last thing you want is your content that you're publishing under your name to sound like AI slop. So please spend some time on this, build your own brain clone. We discussed this in depth inside of AI Revenue Engine. Go ahead and you can check that out as well. Now, I did hint at this before, but I feel I want to show you this in a little bit more detail, exactly what we did, how we reverse engineered all of our launch frameworks so that we can do them on repeat every single time. So let me go ahead and show you how we build our launch OS framework that allows us to basically on repeat over and over again do high quality of sales copies, VSLs, and emails for every product launch that we're doing. And we do one of these a month that gets us to $100,000 a month in sales. But to do that, like I said, it's a very production heavy process, but thanks to Claude, we've been able to push that exceptionally well. So let me walk you through LaunchOS, how that works, and how if you wanted to build something like that for yourself, you can do that as well. So in a typical business, when you're doing any kind of copy work, these are the elements that you typically need. So it could start from positioning. For example, if you're doing a product launch, we're going to build it, positioning the hooks for the product that we're going to bring to market. Then we have to build the opt-in pages. We have to build the sales pages, the promotional emails, webinar slides, outreach messages, as well as welcome emails for people that actually buy or opt in to our email list. So when it comes to copy work, there's a lot of different things to be done. And all of it, of course, revolves around the core idea of what it is we're selling. And I'm sure you've had the same thing where you're launching a product and you have to do all these different things. Now, I don't know if you know this, but we actually launch a product every single month. So what that means is we need a system that is easily repeatable over and over. And now, typically when we launch a product, there's multiple pieces of copies that we need to do. So it starts with positioning and hook for the product that we're going to sell. Then we move on to creating an opt-in page where people can opt in and sign up for the event. Then sales pages, not just a single one, but multiple sales pages where they can choose to buy one or multiple products. So typically when we do a product launch, we end up doing about 4 to 5 different sales pages. Then we need promotional emails that we can send to our list or affiliates can send to their list. We need webinar slides for when we're doing the launch event to showcase what the opportunity is, what the product does. We need outreach messages to talk to the affiliates, to talk to our partners. We need welcome emails as well, so that when someone does actually buy or they opt in, we reach out to them, let them know what they got access to, make sure they have all the details that they need. So all in all, this is quite a fair bit of work. And also, I don't know if you know this, but we do a product launch every single month. So when you're doing this repeatable thing every single month and every time it's a new product, what ends up happening is that you end up redoing a lot of work. So in the past, we've actually had 2 copywriters just doing this alone, just this part alone. And on top of that, we would have another writer who would do blog posts and help out with video scripts and all these things. So we have been able to now optimize and use AI for all of these things. And I'm going to show you how we did it and how you can do something like this for yourself as well. Now, of course, before you do anything, what you need to start with is your current process. So if you've done enough copy work in the past or whatever thing it is you're doing, then you can start to train AI on that. So what that would mean is you go back to your Google Documents or wherever it is you're storing all your copy, and you collect essentially all the materials that you need so that you can train Claude or you can train ChatGPT or whatever it is you're using. I'm going to use Claude, so I'm going to show you that, but you can use whatever platform that you want. But again, to begin with, you need to give context, because without context, Claude wouldn't know where to point you to. And let me also say this. Yes, out of the gate, you can use a ton of different Claude skills or custom GPTs or whatever you want to create copy, but that's never going to sound like you. So there's 2 things you can do. One, if you have actually created and launched product before, if you have done services for which you have copy and you want to emulate that, then collect all of that and put that into one form. Number 2, if you haven't done this before, if you haven't launched products, if you haven't launched services, and this is the first time you're trying to do, then you need to go out there, find successful examples of products or services that have been launched and have converted well. Now, how do you typically do that? Well, for that, you can go to various different networks, affiliate networks, where you can see conversion rates, where you can see EPCs and all those things, and figure out what worked and what didn't work. So that's exactly what we did. We went over to JVZoo, and when we went to JVZoo, right over here, you can look at find products, and this will tell you all the unique products that are launching on the marketplace at any given time. And when you find those, you can scroll through them and you can figure out which ones have good conversion rates, which ones have good EPCs, and you can look at exactly how they're structuring their sales pages. So for example, I'll show you one of them that I have seen and I know it works exceptionally well. So a friend of mine launched this product called Instantly Claude Premium and Bundle, and I know that's a really solid product. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on Get Link, and I'm going to grab this link and go over to this sales page. Then, because I know what this product is and what it does, so I have some prior knowledge being in the market, I'm also going to find the affiliate page for this product. This affiliate page typically gives me everything that I need, right? So we talked about positioning and hook. I can use AI to extract those out of the sales page if I can't make them out immediately. And again, I'm going to show you step by step how to do all of that. Then opt-in pages, and again, because I know this person, I know what he did, so I can find out their opt-in pages as well, and I can utilize this. And then I can go ahead and figure out their sales pages too. So again, this is one of them, and again, I have gone through this funnel, so I know what they are. If you haven't, you can simply use this little hack where you can take the URL, go to Google and type this site, and this will show you all the pages that are under this domain, right? So you can check out all the different pages that they have. And then this way you can find the promotion emails too. So if I go back to the JV link, go to JV doc, and you will see swipes and tools, and they've got all the emails here that they recommend you to use. So this is like the entire email sequence all in one massive document. Then similarly, I can find the webinar slides. I can look on the premium page, on the bundle page, where I know this webinar exists. Right over here, I can see exactly what kind of slides they have used as well. Again, a bit of manual work here, but nothing that you can't do. So you get that as well. And then on top of that, you can get similarly the outreach messages, you can get welcome emails. And again, I have the luxury of being in the market, so I can easily extract that information. But even if you're not All you have to do is a little bit of research. You can even ask Claude to find you these pages. It may not be able to find everything that you need, but it will be able to find you a lot. But again, this is an important point. I want you to have a base framework from where you can leap off of, right? So if you've never done this before, if you make the crucial mistake of trying to reverse engineer all of this without any proven successful examples, you're going to fall flat, because Claude will give you generic advice. ChatGPT will give you generic advice. So instead, what you need to do is you need to feed in data that you know has worked in the past. And again, this is the part that you're going to find boring. You're going to feel like, Neil, I don't want to extract all these sales pages. I just want to be able to put the URLs in and Claude or ChatGPT can do all that. Well, the good news is it actually can do all that for you as well. But if you have everything in a document format somewhere, then you can use it for posterity in the future as well. So that's what I would recommend you to do. But again, it's entirely up to you what you want to do. Now, having said that, I'm going to show you exactly what happens once you have collected all this information. So let's jump on over to Claude and I'll show you what to do with this. By the way, very quickly, as I'm building all this out, I'm going to be turning all these into skill files that I and my team use all the time to create these things really quickly. If you're interested in getting access to those, make sure you join our community where I reveal this and a lot of other information that can help you automate key parts of your business. So go join the AI Revenue Engine community. But in the meantime, let's go over to Claude and I'm going to show you what you do next. So there's a couple of different approaches you can take to this. I'm going to explain both of them to you and I'm going to give you the pros and cons of each. The first approach is creating a new project in Claude. And again, you can use ChatGPT as well. I'm going to singularly focus on Claude because I find it to be far more intelligent and far more useful for what I'm trying to do. Because once I have these skills done, I can pretty much automate all these things on autopilot. So it can go through and create all of these things for me one by one. All I have to do is approve and say, this is good and that's what I want. And it will generate everything for me in a matter of hours. So the first thing you can do is create a new Claude project just to keep it simple. And in this project, you upload all the sources that you have. So for example, let's say if I was to call this Launch OS. In this project, you can come in and upload all the files. All the files in this case would be, for example, the swipes. It would be a JV document. It would be their sales pages. It would be anything that you find useful so that you can reverse engineer what's working for others. That has an interesting point. You cannot do this just with a single sales copy or a single launch. You have to feed in as much information as you can, because the more information you give, the better it will be at finding patterns and reverse engineering for you what works and what doesn't work. The mistake that a lot of people make is simply giving one set of information and expecting that now it's going to give you great output every single time. That doesn't happen. You need to at least feed it 3 types of a sales page so it can deduce what works and then create something similar for you in the future. So back to this, all you have to do is upload all the files that you have in here, and then you're able to ask it to reverse engineer various different things. But again, this is a bit long and laborious and I would not advise you to do this. Instead, here's what I need you to do. So when you get to your Claude desktop application, whether that's for PC or Mac, it doesn't really matter. You have 3 places to start. You can start with chat, which is quite similar to what you do on the web. So you can again make projects, you can query, you can ask questions, or you go to code, which I typically reserve for more advanced things such as actual coding, like programming, or you can use Cowork. And Cowork is what we're going to focus on in this case, because it's going to allow you to use a folder to compress all the information and reverse engineer what works, what doesn't work, and then utilize it to create repeatable frameworks that you can use in the future. So once you have collected all the files, all you need to do is choose the folder where the files exist. So for example, in my case, we've got this folder over here, which is Launch OS Experiment, and all the files are now in here. What I can then do is I can ask it to start understanding what's in the folder. But I'm not only going to ask it to understand, but I'm going to ask it to reverse engineer what works and what doesn't work. So let me go ahead and show you an example of what this looks like in practice. So check this out. Review the files in the folder. I'm showing examples of successful sales pages. Based on that, could you deduce what positioning and hooks typically work? and based on that, create a skills file for positioning and hook framework that I can repeat and reuse all the time. By doing this, what you're essentially doing is you're instructing AI to figure out patterns which humans might typically miss. And again, this is what AI is good for. It's good for doing the grunt work for you. So once you have all these things deduced, you don't have to do it by hand anymore. And what it's going to now do is it's going to read the sales page, it's going to reverse engineer what works, what doesn't work. You can see all the different samples that we have over here, and then it's going to tell you this is the typical hook and positioning framework that works for these sales pages. So this is how I think you should approach it in the future. And again, this is important because once you establish this, any future work to create positioning and hooks becomes easy. And then again, you keep doing the same thing over and over again for opt-in pages, for sales pages, for emails, for JV pages, for webinar slides, and anything you need to do for your own product or service launch framework. But look, I'd also be lying if I said this is a set and forget system, because once you do set it up, once you do have those skills file, it's a good idea to go back and update them, say once a month, because a lot of things change. In a market as dynamic as ours, where you're focusing on selling, where you have to create good direct response copy changes all the time, trends change all the time. So it's a good idea to keep feeding in copies that are actually working now and asking it to improve the skills file, adapt it based on what's profitable at the moment. So this is something that we do every single month. We simply take what works, we feed that back into the system and ask it to re-engineer the skills file over and over again. So as you can see, this is what it's doing right now. It has read all the files, everything that's in the folder, and now it is building a skills file to map this. Now, once you do this, I'm going to show you the example of what the outcome looks like. So for example, this is a positioning framework that's been created for me in the past based on 8 different sales pages that we fed in. Or this is the email swipe framework that has been created for me as well. And I want to show you a couple of others. This is the funnel architecture framework that's been created. That is, what should a funnel typically look like? So it actually builds out the entire thing for you. So it tells you this is how your product should be priced. Or if you want to write front-end sales pages, it tells you basically this is how a sales page should be structured. Same way with the upsells and same way with the JV page as well. So just by doing this, you're able to build out repeatable things for yourself that you can execute. And I want to now show you what happens when you put this into action. So typically, like I mentioned before, we had 2 people working on this around the clock, doing copy work for everything that we would do for a product launch, and we would typically launch once a month. Again, these people were happy because they had full-time jobs, but now we can take this entire thing and run it through the frameworks one by one, and it's able to build everything out for us in under 4 hours. And again, this is with a human in the loop. What that means is that I'm always there, or someone else is always there to make sure that the inputs are correct, that the outputs line up with our expectations, and it works the way we want. So we've been able to compress about 320 hours of work into 4 hours just by doing this. And because of that, we've been able to compress the costs that we were spending on these copywriters and executors before, now just into a $20 a month plan on Claude. And you can see in real time, Claude has now created this multiple hooks for me as well. And as you can now see, Claude has created this multiple skills file for me that I can now utilize too. But just so you know, I'll show you an example of what this would look like if I was using this for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new task, and I'm going to load the folder which has these files in it. And then I'm going to explain to it what it is I'm trying to sell, and it's going to create these positioning and hooks framework for me. So let me show you what this looks like in practice. So this is one of our upcoming product, AI Closer, and I'm just going to give it a simple task. I want to launch AI Closer. This is what it does, and I want you to create hooks and positioning for this product. And it's going to review all the files that are in this folder. It's going to look at everything that we have as context, and it's going to build out hooks and positioning based on this. There we go. I just asked it to use the framework inside the folder, and it checked out everything. And now it's going to use the ultimate positioning framework to build out hooks and positioning for this. So I'm going to just show you what the example of this is and how it is strikingly better than anything I could have produced in as much time. So there you go. It's finished the entire process. You can see everything that it did over here, and you can see the summary as well. And then I'm going to open up the document and show you what this looks like. So let's go all the way to the top. And again, this is very, very detailed. But you can see the core positioning analysis, so 7-element breakdown, which is the unique mechanism, which is a deep close system, honestly, we hadn't thought of branding it like that. So that's quite fantastic already. Then you've got the transformation promise from cold prospect list all the way to hot leads. So we've got that down as well. Then speed claim, removal barriers, proof anchors. So it's got all these things. Then formula selection is recommending what works, what doesn't. And again, all this it was able to do automatically while I just sat here waiting for it to finish, doing other things and just focusing instead of my business. And again, you can do the same as well. All you have to do is follow the process where you feed them some data, you give it some prompts to explain to it what you're after, and it will give you something that is repeatable. And again, all this with a human in loop now takes 4 hours for every single product launch that we do. All right, so now I want to talk about using Claude for AI sales and client system. And there's a misconception when it comes to AI-driven sales and client retention management, that it's all personality driven, that you can't have AI or a computer basically emulate that. And I think that's incorrect, because when you think about what it requires to acquire a client, close them, and then retain them, there's a lot of repeated actions that you probably take in your business. Now, of course, if you haven't done it before, then you're not quite sure what I'm talking about. But as I'm going to explain through this module, you're going to understand how finding, closing, and then retaining clients is a repeatable process that you can execute over and over again using AI, if not in full, at least in big parts. So let me share my screen and I'll walk you through this as well. Now, generally, there's a lot of different systems out there that can act as your CRM, that can do follow-up sequences, outreach, and all those things. And we're not fighting those systems. We're just looking at where Claude actually fits in to when you're trying to build an AI-based sales and client system. So let's actually talk about what a typical process looks like for client prospecting, outreach, and sales. So let's start with this. So you've got all these different parts which you would use if you are trying to manage an entire client lifecycle. You've got lead identification, which leads into research and qualification, and then you do outreach. Then you send out proposals, you do follow-up, you close them, you onboard them, and finally you do a repeatable reporting, which maybe goes out every week or every single month. And it's important to build this as a systemized process if you are trying to do some sort of execution that can be repeated over and over again using AI. So the first thing you need to do is you need to build an SOP if you don't already have one. If you don't have one, here's a quick recommendation. Go to YouTube and find a video, maybe it's an entire course that covers this from start to finish, right? So the single best thing you can do is go find a course on Udemy, or you can go to just YouTube for now. And I'm going to find a long video on full sales and client lifecycle. And when I find something like this, ideally you want like a massive course, something that goes for over 2 hours or longer, and you're able to better encapsulate this. So for example, let's say this one, Lifecycle Marketing 101, 40 minutes. I think it's pretty good. Of course, I haven't actually gone through this content. I could also just add in this one, and hopefully it gives us some videos. But again, I think the quality is always better when you're trying to go out there and actually pay for these courses. Now, this is pretty good, but I think Alex is probably going to talk a lot about online rather than offline. And even though it says 2026, I know it's from last year, so it's not really current if you think about it. So something like this, for example, is from 3 years ago, but this is full sales management course, which is really good. I think this would be much better than what Alex has over there. So next thing I would do if you don't have an SOP is to simply take this, and you can use many different tools out there to grab its transcription, feed that transcription into Claude, and actually turn that into an SOP, right? So I could literally go in here, and I've got vidIQ installed on my computer, so on my browser, and I'm just going to say show transcript. I can copy the entire transcript for about 3 hours, dump it into Gemini, Claude, or anything for that matter. I use Claude mostly, and then ask it to create an SOP that you can utilize over and over again. And that's hopefully going to cover all these different steps. And of course, you can ask it to bear these different steps in mind as it's building something out for you. But once you do this, you'll have a benchmark, a framework from where you can get started and move forward. But having said that, let's do the very first thing, which is lead identification. Now, before I actually get into lead identification, you need to be clear on what your offer is and at least who you want to sell it to. It's okay if you don't have a clear idea just at this point. We're going to do that in lead identification and research and qualification, but you do need to know what your offer is. Could be a software as a service, could be just a service, could be a product you want to sell, could be training. Doesn't really matter. As long as it's well defined, that's what you need to do. Now, I won't go into offer creation at this part in the video. I just want to show you how to use Claude in this entire process. But let's say your offer is that you run an email marketing agency. So you want to find affiliate marketers, or you want to find, let's say, companies that have a lot of leads that are doing affiliate marketing or doing email marketing, but they don't want to do it themselves. They want to give it to someone else so they can focus on their zone of genius. So that is your offer. Now, I said, hey, I want to target e-commerce owners, maybe affiliate marketers, maybe SaaS owners, maybe someone else. We're going to go through the process within, like I said, lead identification and research and qualification. So let's do that now. The simplest thing you can do at this point is actually just talk to Claude to help you brainstorm your prospects if you don't have something in mind. So let's do this right now. So to begin with, I've given it some indication on what it is I'm trying to do, how I usually charge, and then I've asked it to find me top 5 niches for something like this, exactly what I said, email marketing service, and then give me some feedback on which ones are good and why they're good. So it's suggesting e-commerce, online coaches and course creators, B2B SaaS. I talked about that before, as well as talking about real estate agencies and mortgage brokers, as well as health and wellness brands. It's saying those are really good ones. So that's good. It's giving me a justification of why they're good, and it's suggesting basically what it is that works for them. But let's say now I want to decide which ones to go after. Maybe it's giving me a suggestion of which one it is, but it hasn't in this case. So now you get to decide which one it's going to be. So we're going to go with e-commerce just for a minute, but then I'm going to ask it a very specific thing. Okay, so I now found a random e-commerce site. I mean, it's all right. It's nothing great, but here's what I'm doing. I've asked Claude to basically review it. And then based on this, give me business overview, likely pain points, relevant case studies from your portfolio, from my portfolio, and talking points for outreach and a qualification score. So we're going to see what Claude comes back with. Now, personally, I think this is not the best kind of business for me, but I just want to see if Claude can give me a very objective answer rather than saying, hey, let's compare it to something else, because we haven't actually given it any other options. So now it's going to review this, and it's going to come back and say, it's a good business or not a good business, and what are their pain points and what you can do. And this is really good when you're trying to understand which are the best kind of businesses for you to target. So your ICP, ideal client profile. Now that's just lead identification, like understanding in this case whether or not a business is the right kind of business for you. So it explains basically what they do, likely pain points, relevant case studies. These are illustrative, for example. And then it's also giving me outreach talking points. Now, this is pretty good. So this channel, this person, basically, if I go find their Instagram, they have 275,000, it looks like, subscribers. Let's go check it out. Is it actually true? Holy cow. That's a really, really big number. And I don't know how much revenue they are making, but they absolutely could be making a lot more revenue. But again, here you can see we already moved on to the second thing, which is qualification. They're not very qualified, and it explains why. Because they audience size is good. That's good. It's a decision maker as direct solo founder, but then there's no visible email list. Like if you look at this, for example, there is an opt-in form, but businesses like these don't really do a great job at that. And it gives you other reasons as why this is not really good. So she's a compelling prospect emotionally, but otherwise it might not be worth the outreach effort in this case. So now it's up to you whether you want to proceed with this or not. But looking at this gives you an idea. Do you want your ICPs to be something bigger than this or something smaller than this? And that way you can work it out whether or not that's the path you want to go down on. And once you've established that, let's say in this case we agree that, okay, Gemma is someone we want to reach out to, then you want to create an outreach message. Now our ask of Claude is quite simple. Based on this particular user, I want you to go ahead and create 3 outreach messages with benefit-led framing, peer tone, so we're not talking down to them, as well as specific personalization based on the research output, and a single clear call to action. Now, there's a very interesting thing that you're noticing here. I'm not dumping in one massive prompt and asking it to create everything in one shot. When you're using Claude or any other AI for that matter, you don't really want to do one-shot production, because honestly, it sometimes hallucinates, it gets some things wrong. And if it gets something wrong early on, then everything thereafter, the downstream result are bad. So you don't want to do that. You want to go step by step. You want to validate every output it gives you, make sure it's good, and then continue. If it's not, you can go back and change some things. So for example, this one, 275k followers and no safety net. Your buyers are worth more than 595. And going full-time is a hard part. Keeping it is a system. So it's given me these ideas for outreach emails, which is fantastic. I can take all of them. I can take one of them, whatever sounds right, whatever feels right. I can reach out to Gemma in this case. And again, if you're wondering, well, how do you actually reach out to Gemma? If you look around, you'll quite easily find an email address, or there you go, crochetbygemma@gmail.com. And you can reach out to Gemma and you can then engage her and pitch her your services. In my case, that would be email marketing. Now, the other thing I want to mention as well is that you don't have to know everything about the prospect before you reach out to them. All you're doing is you're finding them and qualifying them. And then look, I know we're doing this one by one at this time, but it is possible for you to absolutely use Claude to automate this entire thing from end to end. For example, you can actually set up separate agents. And again, this is a bit advanced, but I want you to know, but you can set up separate agents which do all these things. So you can have an agent that goes to places like Apollo, which is something you can use for lead generation. It costs a little bit, but it's really effective. And you can also like integrate this inside of Claude and actually grab leads directly. So you could use that, but you could utilize it and then have it run research and qualification in the background. Another agent basically writes the outreach messages. Now, within this, I would use a tool like AI Closure to actually send the outreach messages, because at the moment, Claude doesn't really have an inbuilt feature for it to reach out on your behalf. So use something like AI Closer or Instantly to actually send out these cold emails. And then once someone does respond, you do propose and all those things. We'll talk about that too. But my point is that you can automate majority of it, but don't try and automate everything in the first go. Not until you've done it manually, because once you've done it manually, you'll see exactly what quality looks like and what lack of quality looks like, and you can improve it from there on. So again, once you have the outreach messages, the simplest thing you can do for now is send a simple email. And in the beginning, do exactly what I've done. Find some random businesses like these. Reach out to 20, 30, 40, 50 businesses every day for 30 days. And once you have that data, you can see exactly what positive response looks like, what negative response looks like. Look, let me do a simple math for you here. Let's say you are doing this by hand to begin with, and you're reaching out to approximately 20 businesses a day for 20 days in a month. So you're not working weekends, so you're reaching out to about 400 businesses. When you're doing this manually, I can promise you, you're going to at least hear back from 5 of these businesses, right? Possibly a lot more, possibly 40, possibly 20 if you're doing it right, but at least 5 businesses are going to be like, tell me more, I'm interested. And again, it doesn't matter what your product or service is, as long as you're doing good work in writing the emails, as long as your email is getting delivered, you're going to get positive responses. And after that, you basically work on closing them, which we'll talk about in just a minute as well. So 5 responses is what you're looking for in the first month. Then when you actually reach out to them, let's say if they do actually come back to you, what do you say to them? What's your proposal? What's your offer? Remember, you already have an offer, but what's your proposal in the interim until you actually sign them? Let's talk about that now. Your proposal in this case is basically, look, here's what I can do for you and here's how much it's going to cost you. That is as simple as that. That's what a client is interested in. What can you offer? Is it good for me? And how much is it going to set me back? So when you're building out a proposal, the simplest thing you can do is find some other proposals that are out there and then customize it for yourself. For example, you can just go find an example proposal. You can Google it, or even better, you can just go to Claude and say, hey, help me write a proposal based on services that I want to offer to this person. So let's do that right now. Can you help me write a proposal based on services I have to offer? Ask me any questions if you have. So can you help me write a proposal based on services I have to offer? Ask me any questions if you have. And when you write an open-ended prompt like this, it allows Claude to come back to you and quiz you as to what you want to do right. And this is really good when you yourself are not very clear as to what you want to do. So let's do this right now. What services are you including in this proposal? So I'm including basically all of this, because I'm going to offer literally everything. What's your pricing structure? Flat fee setup plus monthly retainer, flat fee setup plus performance cut only. That's what I'm going to go for, because I know I can get results. And what format do you want the proposal in? I want it to be in Google document style, or let's say simple email I can paste and send. So for now, I'm just going to do a simple email I can paste and send, but I like Google document because I can duplicate that over and over again and customize it for people who I reach out to and who I talk to. Because when those 5 people do get back to me, all I have to do is reach out to them and say, hey, all right, based on what you're doing, I have created this proposal for you, which should align with how you want to work. And please note that I don't charge you every month. I only charge based on the results, but because of the time involved, there is an upfront fee, right? And that's okay, because, hey, I got to put food on my table too. But after that upfront fee, I don't charge you money until you make a certain amount. And that certain amount could depend on whatever it is you're doing. So again, that comes out to you. If you're unclear again, you can brainstorm with Claude, but I think these are things you should know of when you are looking to build an agency. So this is what you do. And again, that goes in line with the follow-up as well. If someone doesn't reply to you, it's a good idea to follow up after 3, 4, or 5 days and do at least twice. But if they don't respond after 3 emails, you can just drop them completely. So again, I want to repeat the process so far because this is very, very important. You identify what niche you want to go after. Then you find the leads using many different tools such as Apollo, and you can again connect Claude and Apollo together so Claude can automatically find those leads, right? You just tell the parameter is going to grab those leads by itself. And then you enrich those leads. You basically qualify them, whether or not they work. And if they're qualified, you ask Claude to essentially write 1, 2, or 3 outreach messages for them, which can actually all of them be put inside a Google Sheet. And once you've got all of that down, one by one, you copy and paste this in and you send it out. And again, you can systemize the entire thing eventually. You can do everything in bulk with a tool like AI Closer because it actually customizes the email, that personalizes them based on who it is going out to. But this is by far the fastest way to start when you are just using Claude. And again, have multiple follow-ups as well. So you can follow up with people in case, email falls through the crack or maybe their attention just got lost in the moment. So you do this. And once someone raises their hand, they read your proposal and they're like, I'm interested, let's talk. You can talk to them, you can exchange emails, and then they're ready to be closed. And let's talk about how you can use Claude to do just that. So I absolutely love the free audit close. And this is what it looks like. When someone is a little bit interested, instead of just, getting them to sign up on the dotted line and say, okay, now you have to pay, say, all right, well, it's good they're interested, but I want to make sure I am a fit for you as well, and then you're a fit for me. So let's get on a call, and I would advise you to do a call because I think it goes a long way. And let's talk about this. Let's audit what you have right now because look, I don't know this person at all. I don't know what her business looks like. I don't know if she's horrible to work with. I don't know if she's good to work with. So I'd rather have a call with her first and figure out whether her and I align, whether we are able to work together on something and I can trust her over the longer term. So I jump on a call with her, talk it out, and just see what her business looks like on the inside. Because you very well might find that even though she has 375k subscribers on Instagram, she absolutely sucks. Could be she absolutely sucks at list building. Like any of her posts, for example, and there are many, maybe there's no way where she's like building a list. So again, if she says, no, I don't want to build a list like that on my Instagram, well, that's a problem. Because if you don't want to build a list like that, then obviously I can't work with you because my results depend entirely on your results because I'm tying my future, my results, my income to your income. So if you don't want to increase your income, well, that's bad news for me as well. So in this case, it's very important that you talk to them, that you basically work it out and make sure that you do some kind of audit so you're able to ensure that you can essentially line things up properly. Now, I just saw this. Let's go back and fix this up. So I'm going to go for this and let's say this. Okay, now it's going to build out the entire proposal for me and that's fine. So again, when you are trying to close someone, especially in the beginning, don't just give them a price and a buy button and say, okay, just buy and let me know once it's done, but actually talk to them. Only after you have closed 5 people can you understand what works, what doesn't work, and then you can repeat the process over and over again, hands off. The good thing about doing these audits as well is that you can actually record the meeting with their permission, of course. And when you record the meeting, you have notes, which you can use in the future to understand more about them. So you can use these notes in the future if you ever have to refer back to them and improve the campaign based on what was discussed maybe 6 months ago. And again, any material that you create hereafter, maybe it's ads, maybe it's call to actions, maybe it's funnels, anything for that matter is going to be better now because of these notes. And once they sign up with you, then you onboard them using a very specific methodology. Now, whenever you're onboarding someone, to begin with, you need to collect all their assets in one place. So I would ask you to interview them or ask them to send you documents or anything they can that explains their business fully to you. For example, looking at this Instagram, I can actually use many different scrapers available via Apify and Claude. And again, I've got tons of videos for that on the channel where you can extract useful information to understand more about how she operates her Instagram channel. And once you have that information, you can then better understand what kind of things you need to create for her. Okay, I'm saying Gemma, this is actually Jenna. But doing all of this allows you to onboard the client properly because running agency services, I found that clients are often quite terrible at reporting properly what they do. Like you really have to extract that information out of them. So these days, if you can just use AI to automatically extract that information from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, wherever they hang out, that would save you a ton of time and heartache. And then finally, when you have that, you do the reporting. Now, reporting is something that ideally should be done every week, but if not, at least every month. And within reporting, I want to be very clear on this because a lot of people feel that, hey, we want to deliver positive results all the time. You may not be able to. The first week, first month might be slow because you're setting things up, and then things start to compound and they start to grow. So when you're doing reporting, make sure you create a template. And again, you can go back to Claude and say, hey, this is what I'm doing for this person. Could you create a weekly report checklist that I update every single week or every single month so I don't forget some important thing? Again, Claude can help you build a system like this end to end. You just have to start and finish it by following a specific step-by-step process. And if you do it, I can guarantee you that you're going to get much more mileage out of your time, and you'd be able to feel less stressed and have less problems with how clients communicate with you, because not everything will be centralized for you. And again, as you do this more and more, you can actually build your client dashboard inside of Claude, or rather Claude can help you build a client dashboard that you can use over and over again. Now let's talk about using AI to support your customers better. Typically when it comes to support, we think it's all about people. It's all about putting more bodies behind the tickets, behind customer support, so they're able to get to resolution faster. But what I've noticed, having at one point worked with 5 support agents in my team, is that more isn't always better. In fact, if we can have better trained support agents, it's much easier to get through the tickets faster because good agents are able to close those tickets much more quicker. But thing is, since AI has come around, I'm finding that AI and human hybrid as a support agent combination can actually be really effective. So rather than just giving all support to AI or just giving all support to a human being, you can combine both of them and actually build a setup that clones the best parts of a human being and the best parts of AI. So let's go ahead and talk about how you can build AI into your business so it can support your customers better. Now, support will make a lot more sense if I start to categorize this for you and explain to you where I think the human being could be more useful in support and where AI could be really useful to turn things around quite quickly. So let's go through this together. Whenever there are tickets about account and access, you can quite often, as long as you have accounts, basically resolve them using AI. Let's say someone emails to you and says, hey, I can't find my login details. It's very easy for AI to turn around and say, well, go here and reset your password. Of course, AI should also check whether that account exists or not. So you can build systems within your own business to actually check for that. Of course, if that's not the case, you can always hand it over to a human being. But when it comes to documentation or how to, which is how do I do this or how do I do that, you can quite easily have AI or some level of automation handle that for people. Intercom, for example, has built the entire model around this years before AI actually became big, which means that if you use Intercom chat widget on your website and you ask for help, it will guide you as to what's the best help or how-to topic that you can use. And now, typically, most AI-driven support desks have this kind of solution built in as well. So it's not that hard to do. But if you want to build your own, you can use Claude and Notebook together using their RAG agents to build something like that for yourself. We cover that in other video where we talk about how you can build a chatbot using what Alex Hormozy teaches. And then you've got general inquiry about pre-sales questions and account information requests. Again, what we have actually done is we've built a very elaborate N8N based automation where when a ticket comes in, it checks in against our own database of how-to articles and all the documents that we have. And based on that, it basically answers questions related to sales. And then billing as well, like invoice request, invoice can be generated automatically, plans can be emailed automatically, and pricing can be clarified as well. So for most part for these, you don't need a human being involved. They can at least be automated partially by AI. Now, if you're not comfortable letting AI handle the whole thing, you can at least have AI draft a response, which can then be edited by human beings. So that's actually what we do, where we have, like I said, built an entire automation where the ticket comes in and our system checks it against all the previous tickets, checks it against the previous, the help articles, and then based on that crafts a response. If there's a confidence level of 90-95%, it sends that through as a response. If not, then the system waits for a human being to come in and actually take over the ticket. So that's very useful. We don't use a chatbot. We don't use basically a chat option on our website because I found that chat trains people to expect a response very quickly, which sometimes, to be fair, we're not able to give because we only now have one person working in our support team. And to be fair, he only handles 20% of the tickets because 80% of the tickets fall in this bracket and they are handled automatically. But let's talk about what kind of tickets a human being should resolve. So anything related to technical issues or bugs. Now, this is where if we have a software issue, for example, it gets escalated over to developers. So the human agent would say, well, I can see you facing this problem. Let me take it up with the developers and I'll get back to you with a resolution. So that gets sent into Asana as a ticket where we handle that. So you don't need Claude for something like this, but you do need people involved in this process. Then anything related to performance and speed or data and security, again, it's good to have a human layer in it because you want to make sure that your customers understand and feel comfortable using your products or services. Anything related to integrations and API should also ideally be handled by a human being because a human being can guide the person better. Of course, if you have some how-to articles on what kind of integrations are in place with what you sell, great. But if you don't, then a human being can come and answer those questions. And the good thing is that some of these things can also turn around and become their own knowledge base or help articles for the future. And what we typically do in this case is this, which is a pretty easy setup. We would go to a ticket. We would take the original request that came in and we would take the customer response and we would ask Claude very simply, if you feel this is valuable enough to be converted into a repeatable request, can you turn this into a help desk article? And Claude quickly turns it into a help desk article as well. Now, in the future, hopefully, there are services where when you resolve a ticket, it's able to do that automatically. But at least for now, you are able to do that with a human and AI working in tandem. And then you've got complaints and feedbacks and feature requests. Again, some of this stuff moving forward can be automated fully via AI, where if it's a feature request, you basically plug it into your feature sheet. And if it's a complaint, again, that gets added into a complaint box. It does get responded by a human being, but that is something that we can look into future to improve our products and services. So like I said, depending on how many tickets you get in a month, typically 80% of them can be fully or partially handled by AI and 20% must be handled by a human being still at this point. But it is not impossible to think that maybe 1 year down the line, you should be able to do all of this automatically. But let's talk about how to actually bring about Claude into this equation. So the simplest way to start would be to use Claude projects. It could be on the desktop, could be on the web, doesn't really matter, but create a new project. Let's say call it support. So I'm going to call it KV support as that's my company. And I'm just going to go ahead and create this project. So that project is created. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in all the files that are relevant to this. So for example, I've got files in my computer or my Google Drive, and that could be quite useful as well, which would be useful for Claude to refer to when it's trying to answer those questions. I could connect them. But in this case, the easiest thing to do would be to go to a knowledge base such as this, and then simply download all of these articles and dump them into this kind of file folder structure. So again, it's a bit of a laborious process when you're doing it for the first time, but once you do it, you don't have to do it again. And now anytime you ask Claude a question, it's going to refer to those files and answer those to you. So I want to show you a real example right now so you can see how smooth and effective this process is. So let me actually show you how easy it is to use a setup like this to answer tickets. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this link, this support desk link, and I'm going to give it a sample ticket. So for example, we got this sample ticket and I'm going to paste that here, and then I'm simply going to ask it to refer to that link and all the documents underneath it and help me answer this question to a customer. Now, bear in mind, if you actually had dumped in all the files in here, this process would be smoother because all you'd have to do is ask it to refer to the file. But I'm just going to go ahead and ask it to use that URL, understand what's there, and then help answer this ticket. Okay, so very simple ask. A customer reached out to me with the following ticket. Can you please help respond to it? To better understand how to respond, you can use the URL below and look at any relevant knowledge base article that might be useful in this instance. So we're just going to dump that into Claude, and I'm going to show you what Claude's response looks like. Now, what it's doing is it's actually understanding what's inside the knowledge base, and it's crafting a response based on what this customer has asked. And again, this response needs to be as clear and succinct as possible, because once it is, then we'll be able to get back to the person and resolve their issues quite conveniently. So there you go. Just check this out. Thanks for reaching out, and great news that this is fully verified. This is what you need to do. All the things are in there step by step, also linking to the articles. Now, this is by far much better than my support agents have been sending at the moment. I'm looking at the response, and to be honest, this is really good. So again, this is the kind of process that you can include in your business. Of course, if you want to improve this even further, if you want this to sound more like you and not just generic AI slop, then I would strongly advise you to go to AI Revenue Engine and check out Clone Your Brain, because it actually helps clone your voice and how you think and how you act and what you talk about, what you don't talk about. And that means when you have all this information in, it will help create a much better response based on you as a business owner. So integrating AI, integrating Claude into your support setup doesn't have to be very complicated. What I've shown you is by far the simplest starting step. Now, one thing you can do to actually make this better is this. Whenever you are asking Claude for responses, ask it very explicitly as well. If you think a human in the loop should step in, please point out where and why. And this way, Claude will be able to guide you in case you need to step in, rather than it trying to answer the tickets badly. So the best way to do this is to start with a big prompt where you can dump all the information, including the links and the ticket details, and Claude will be able to take all of that in and build a response for you and tell you exactly at one point humans should step in or not. And if you use projects like these, it would allow you to basically compartmentalize all the information so that you're able to answer everything effectively rather than crowding it into different places. Now, of course, one of the things that's important is if you have multiple people on your team, for example, and you want all of them to share the same context as well. In that case, here's what I would recommend. I would advise you to set up a common folder, maybe on Google Drive or Dropbox, and put all of your knowledge articles into that one place. So when someone is starting up a new project, all they have to do is pick up all those files and dump them all in over here. And when they do that, they'll have access to all the information. Anytime you add a new file, let them know to do the same over and over again. And then again, you can help your team build out custom instructions like answer this way or don't answer this way. And that would be really helpful as well. Another thing you can do, which is a little bit advanced, and we'll talk about that in the coming modules, is using an MCP. So let me show you very quickly, but don't worry if this glazes over your head for now. We will discuss MCPs in a bit more detail. But head on over to your profile here, go to settings, and you can go to capabilities, and then you can go to connectors as well. And you can find different connectors that you can connect with to get better, higher quality data at any given time. So in this case, we are using, for example, Zoho, and we've got Zoho projects, CRM, books, and desks. So I can connect with my Zoho desk so I can grab ticket data in real time. Of course, in this case, your support desk should be able to connect directly to Claude. I don't know which one you're using, but make sure you find out whether or not they have an MCP. But if I do this, if I connect with it, then I'm able to, for example, grab the ticket information directly within this, and I'm going to be able to help resolve those tickets much faster. Now, I don't know if they have the capability of actually posting response in those tickets, but then again, once you've written one, it's a case of simple copy and paste. And again, it's good to have a human in the loop when you've got those 20% of the tickets where a human intervention is required. But if you use AI in your support channel, it's going to help you do things much faster. And to be honest, your customers would be better for it because they will get exactly what they need in the right order. All right, so let's talk about admin and operations in module number 9. And this is an important one because I feel this is something a lot of people take for granted. They feel that the work that they have to do in the business on a daily basis is just their grind, and that's just something they have to deal with. Let me give an example. Let's say you have team meetings, maybe 2 or 3 team meetings a week. What happens after them? What happens before them? All those things are things that can be automated using Claude. I'm going to show you that in this part of the video. Then things like inbox management or scheduling a calendar, all these things might seem rather small, but they're actually not, because they become this black hole of time, which is neither profitable nor fun. So you end up wasting time doing things that could actually be automated using AI, or at the very least, people who are highly more capable at this than you are. So let's get into it and talk about how you can use Claude to plan and ensure that you don't waste your day. So again, at this point, I would strongly encourage you to join our classroom, because I walk you through how you can actually find things that are not really productive for your business, and then you can utilize that to figure out how you need to audit your time better. So go through that, because that's going to help you. But what you're also going to realize is that you spend about 40 to 50% of your day-to-day things doing things that are neither productive nor making you any money. So you'll find that you spend about 30 to 50% of your time every day doing things that neither make you money nor are productive. So let's get into it, and I'm going to walk you through how to figure out what those are and then how to actually make sure you can use AI as a layer to separate yourself from these things. So I'll give you an example of my day to begin with. It's a Monday, so here's the typical things I've been doing today. Now, this is typically what's on my list today, but the thing is that this may change further depending on what comes throughout the day. Of course, I'm recording these videos as well. So with a lot of this, especially this, and this, it's a lot of admin work. It's a lot of work between me and my team where I have to make sure that they have enough work, that if there's anything they need feedback on, I can get back to them and whatnot. And then, of course, you've got client meetings as well, where if you are doing any kind of meeting with someone, you need to be prepared about coaching, about training, answering their questions, all those things. Other things that you see over here are more like in the moment things that I need to get done because we're doing a product launch right now. So knowing all this is very, very important. So I insist that when you start your day, you actually sit down and think about what are the key things on your plate. I usually do this the night before, but if you can't, you do that the first thing in the morning. So you dedicate 10-15 minutes to make sure that you have a clear agenda for the day so you're not haphazardly trying to get stuff done. So when it comes to tasks like this, you can quite easily give up or let Claude handle most of them for you. And I'm going to explain just with some examples, how is it that I approach them on a day-to-day basis. How you set it up will vary, but the very first thing you need to do is build a standard operating procedure. And a standard operating procedure, or SOP, is really important because once you have a clear system of doing any particular task, parts of it could be fully automated. I'm not saying the entire thing should be automated, but parts of it can. So let's say there's a client meeting in this case that I'm thinking about. It's good to just sit down and think about how does your preparation for the meeting go and what you need to do during the meeting and then what you need to do as a follow-up to the meeting. So I'll give you my example. Let's say if I'm having a client meeting today and we're going to discuss how we are operating cold email marketing on their behalf because we're helping them with lead gen. So that's going to be the core topic of discussion. Before that, what I need to do is I need to think about when we met last time, what were the action points that were discussed, and what action has been taken on those particular action points since. Then I need to report those to the client. Then I need to ask them about the work that they have done on their part. And then we need to think about what the next steps are going to be. And then as a follow-up, when I have those next steps, I need to turn them into action points and I need to either execute them myself or hand them over to the client. So as you can imagine, all of these meetings have a set process. So it is very important to define your standard operating procedure first. And it's okay if some things deviate, but most of the time they need to circle back to mostly what the task is about. So in this case, what I would do is if I don't have this setup from before, I would just take any meeting that I had with a client in the last instance and I would take the transcription of that meeting. You can use a tool like Otter. You can use other tools that are free and turn those meetings into transcripts. And then you can load that transcript into Claude. And the prompt that you give to Claude in that case is simple. I just had a meeting with this client. Can you go through this and tell me what are the action points that I need to work on and the action points that he or she needs to work on? Now, it would be useful if you were to create a separate project per client as well, because then you can keep everything in one place. So again, you come up with those action points and then as a human in the loop, you review them. Are they correct or are they not correct? If they are correct, you can load them up into Asana or whatever project management tool you're using. If they are tasks that you need to give to your client, you can email them and ask them to work on those things and then bring that report forward into the next meeting. And when it comes time for the meeting, then you can refer to all these action points that you previously had and see as what's been done and look at what's been done within Asana. So again, you can use Claude to basically say, look, for this particular client, any task related to this client, can you tell me, review the work and tell me what's been done before? If you're using another project management tool, that's perfectly fine as well. We just use Asana, so I'm giving you that example. And then when that meeting is done again, you go through the same loop. Load that meeting transcript into Claude, ask Claude to create action items, work on those action items over and over and over again. And when you get good at it, you can build a master dashboard so Claude can actually track for you what was done on what date. And this way you always stay in touch with what you're working on and you also feel a sense of achievement. But again, the very first thing is having an SOP because it helps you move forward in the right direction and at the right pace. Then let's talk about project status reporting. Now, this is again something that's going to be very useful when you're using a project management system. Because we use Asana, I'm going to show you an example of that. So let's go over to settings. And in here, I'm going to go over to connectors and I'm going to find Asana. As you can see, I'm connected with this already. You can see if any other platform that you're using, such as monday.com is there or ClickUp is there. I do believe they are. And that way you can extract whatever project information you want at any given time. So let's go ahead and I'm going to jump into a new channel. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So we have a launch in progress, agentic agency. Review Asana and tell me what work has been done there and what's pending. So let's add that. So here I'm going to click on this plus sign and connectors. You can see Asana is already selected. I'm going to deselect some of these because I don't really need them right now. But Asana is selected and let's run this and see what comes out. Now, in this case, I am going to use Sonnet because I think it's much better than Haiku, but I'm not going to use something like Opus because that's just going to be meaninglessly effective or expensive in this particular case. So there you go. It's still going through the process. There's 229 tasks, 79 have been completed, 150 are pending work. And this allows me to go in and see what's pending and why that is. But you can see all of these things that it's going through right now. And it's going to build out this report for me, which gives me a very clear overview of what I need to do. Now, look, this might seem like a disjointed part of the process, but if you build it intelligently, you can actually use Claude Code to connect a lot of these agents together. So every morning when you wake up, you have a very clear view on exactly how the projects are progressing and what still needs to be done to push them in the right direction. And again, when you have the meeting notes, when you have the project status coming in, when you have all these details, a lot of this works gets shrunk from about, say, 2 hours a day to about 15 minutes a day, which is a massive time savement, Now, one thing that most people struggle with as well is inbox management. And actually, that's been cashed in by different tools that try to sell you the idea of managing your inbox automatically. To be honest with you, I think it's much simpler than using AI. But if you were going to, here's what I would recommend you to do. For starters, whenever you have all the different emails coming in, filter them already based on what's important and what's not. So if you do that, 90% of the emails that come in every single day would go away, and you would only be looking at emails that actually move the needle. And the good thing is that Claude actually has built-in connectors that you can use to have it check Gmail as well. So let's go back into settings and we're going to look at connectors, and you can see we have connection with Gmail as well. But if you are using third-party tools such as Outlook or something else, there might not be a direct connection, in which case you may not be able to get all the information automatically into Claude. But the simplest thing you can do is actually to use Claude Code, build an extension or anything else that sits in your browser, and anytime you open an email, it can actually write a response for you right away. That way you don't have to guess and wonder what you need to say as a response to an email. Again, very advanced, but very effective when you're trying to build these systems for yourself. Next up is calendar workflows. I don't know if you know this, but because you connect to all these different tools, for example, I'm connecting here with Google Calendar, I can actually ask Claude to update my calendar with a specific meeting. So I can say, can you set up a meeting for me for 5 p.m. with this person, this email address on this date. Now, it's not going to actually mail that person, but it will set up that meeting in your calendar, and you can then go ahead and edit it as you want. To me, this is not a big time save, but it's kind of nice to have feature where you can just work within Claude to do things in your calendar. But then again, for me, I'd rather just quickly switch screen to calendar, make a quick event, and come back to this, because there's no point wasting AI credits on things like these. But in all this said and done, I want you to think about having a weekly rhythm that you have to deal with, because these kind of tasks are okay. But if you're doing these tasks every single day, then it's worth it for you to create a new skill altogether where you ask Claude every morning at 9 a.m., go to my Asana, look at my inbox, look at my feed, and look at these particular projects or all the projects that I'm working on, and tell me what are the most critical things that I should be focusing on, or what are the tasks that are way past deadline. And Claude will guide you so that you get those things done and finish the things that you've been procrastinating on for a very long time. So again, all this is a step-by-step thing, but once you get your hands dirty, once you try all this out, you'd be able to build it out so that you can use it over and over and over again. Now, in module number 10, I want to talk about MCP, Claude, and the world. This is a really big one, so, put on your seatbelt, sit down, grab a cup of coffee if you have to, and just really listen to me. MCP is a very, very important thing that Claude came out into. So Claude came up with this idea where if you want to connect to anything outside of Claude, you need to do via model context protocol. So I'll explain this to you in simple terms, and then I'll show you some examples. We actually have already looked at some examples. So when you're using Claude, let's say you want to talk to Asana. Again, you just saw that example previously. If you want to connect to Zoho Mail or Zoho Desk, for example, instead of relying on APIs or webhooks, which do actually power up these MCPs that we talk about, they've built this kind of box where something like this would sit. And then with a simple protocol, with an MCP protocol, Claude can talk to it. So what's happened because of this innovation is that a lot of people, a lot of companies are trying to do the same thing with their technology. They're trying to build out MCPs to their SaaS so that Claude can retrieve data from them directly. I know this because one of our platforms is Mailview, which is an email marketing platform. We don't have an MCP yet, and I wish we did. And we're working towards that. We're working to build an MCP so that all the details can be automatically extracted from Mailview whenever we need them, and also automatically placed back as well. So essentially, it's APIs, but modeled a little bit differently, so it works seamlessly with Claude. So using this, as I've shown you earlier, Claude can actually connect with a lot of things. So let's go into settings, and I'm going to show you all the connectors, and they are pretty cool actually. So if you go to connectors, let's go to browse. They have hundreds of them, like literally hundreds of them. And plugins, by the way, are a combination of connectors. Typically, that's how they're presented, and skills as well sometimes. But I mean, think as far as you want to go. Like let's say for Canva. Canva has a connector, right? Let's actually go first and filter by what's popular. So I'm going to sort by rather what's popular right now. So Google Drive, I use that. That way it's able to extract everything quite easily from my drive. I use Gmail as well sometimes, although Gmail I usually keep for personal stuff. Google Calendar, I use it too. Canva, we don't use Canva very much, at least I don't, so I don't use it. Figma, Notion, again, Notion's where you write various things. Like it's a bit not like Google Docs, but you use it to basically keep your data. Altash and Rovo, Slack. Slack is a big one for internal chat. Microsoft 365, HubSpot, Linear, I don't use, Monday.com, and then there's just like others. Intercom we talked about before, Box, Miro, Gamma, Asana, Granola, Vercel for development, and so on and so forth. Zoo as well. Actually, didn't know they had Zoo. So that's pretty good. Search, recap, and act on your Zoom meetings. That's actually pretty incredible. Because I was talking about using Otter. Heck, you could just use this directly. So again, you could literally spend weeks and months just exploring this and what's possible. And like I said, if you use connectors the right way, you can build a lot of logical steps that follow one after the other. For example, a meeting just happened. Grab the notes, grab the action points, and depending on what was said and who should the task be allocated to, go put it into Asana. So the task gets created and then it gets reported on as well, right? So all that can be done. Like one of the things that we are exploring as well, for example, is when we do a meeting, we talk about, okay, we want to make the sales page. Claude can just take that and then create that sales page for us in the background automatically. We don't even have to touch a single thing. That's very advanced level of automation that these MCPs allow you to do. So there are tons of different MCPs available. I would encourage you to explore all of them. Some of them connect to paid services. Some of them are free services. So it just comes down to what you're looking for. Let me search for one. If they have GoToWebinar, they don't. So no webinar MCP, but they have meeting note takers such as Fireflies. I don't know if they have Otter. They have Otter as well, which is new. So for example, if I click on this, let's connect and see what happens. So let's go ahead and relaunch the app if it's required to. This is good. Authorize access. And there we go. Otter is now connected as well, right? So I can decide what kind of things I want it to be able to do. I'll just give it all the permission. So let's go ahead and test it out right now. Okay, you can see my Otter is selected in this conversation, and I'm going to just turn off Asana for now, and let's see if it works with Haiku. I want you to go check my conversations and find my last call with Dominic and see what was discussed and give me an action item list from that, or build an action item list from that talk. So again, you can see it's finding it. So you can see we have actually, we did talk about that. The conversation might not have been shared with Claude. It might be a different name. Okay, I need to ask it to go check Otter. Can you go check this in Otter? So let's see if it uses connector automatically and it's able to do that. But let's see. There we go. Let's allow it. Yeah, I should have really given it more context and said used Otter. So just new mistake. Let's allow. So there you go. I found multiple calls. The most recent one from April 16th, which is what I want. Let's go ahead and then I'm going to allow it. And the cool thing is this is even working in Haiku, which means I don't have to waste a lot of credits for something like this. But again, the quality of its action points may matter. So these are my action points that I need to do. There we go. This is incredible. Now, as a follow-up step, just to show you this, here's what I can do. Can you please take the task 1, 2, 3 from this, which are immediate and high priority, and build them out in my Asana? You can use any project related to KV Social or Dominic for this if you're able to find it. Okay, so now I'm asking it to use Asana. Actually, I haven't connected Asana here for this one, so I'm going to turn that on, and hopefully it now works and it's able to automatically create a task for this within Asana. And again, this is how these processes flow. The cool thing is that you are able to do this yourself as well. If you have a technology that you use that you have created yourself, you're able to build an MCP on top of that as well. So again, while it's doing this, I want to just visualize to you exactly what you can do with it. So if you think about your day, and we talked about that earlier, if you have a list of things that need to be done and there are dependencies between them, you can basically trigger one and ask it to take an action on a second thing. And then once that gets done, ask it to take action on third thing. And all of these things can happen automatically behind the scenes. Ideally, you should be using the desktop mode. And within that, even you should be using Claude Code. One caveat, of course, is that you need to have your computer on at all times. But again, these are very advanced automations that we're talking about. But the cool thing is they even work on a basic, cheap $20 a month plan. Now, it is entirely possible that there are some things that you can't do with MCP. For example, we can go check it out, but I don't remember an MCP, for example, for Facebook. So it can automatically post content on Facebook. So let's look for this right now. There isn't one. I mean, you can use Windsor to extract data. So that's that's perfectly fine. And then you can, again, use Supermetrics to extract ad-based data. That's okay. But maybe they have integrations with Buffer. Doesn't look like it. Or HubSpot might have a built-in social media scheduling tool, maybe high level, doesn't look like it. But that's the part where I feel Claude at the moment stops helping you. So in cases where you have to actually put information out there on social media, you're better off using external services for that. There's a lot of good services such as Hootsuite, Buffer, and you can utilize those to actually post the content out. But again, you won't be able to extract data right back into Claude with that. So there are going to be some points that struggle with something like this, but not all is lost. You can simply go ahead and use things like make.com or Zapier or N8N for advanced stuff like this, which is not yet covered by Claude. But if you build it intelligently, you can build self-sustaining systems within Claude, which can then call out to N8N when it is required. And then again, N8N can pass that information back into Claude and continue along the process. In fact, this is a very good approach if you're looking to build something long-term. So rather than trying to build everything in one place, you can build it as a piecemeal solution. So for example, if your system has 5 different steps, you can do one step in Claude, another step in Claude, but then another one you can do via N8N, back into Claude, and then back into N8N. That might seem like a lot of work, but this way you're also not creating full dependency on one platform. Now, in this case, I'm not going to talk about building a custom MCP. It's a bit of work. There's a bit of cost associated with that. It is useful, but if you are new at technical things, I wouldn't advise you to do one. But if you want to, you can go ahead and just ask Claude, I want to build an MCP for this kind of context. How should I go about it? And Claude's going to guide you. So Claude's going to tell you to build an MCP, you need all these details, and need to do all these different things. And again, you can take a stab at it yourself, but it's not something that Claude can fully deploy for yourself, so that you will have to actually do some work here as well. So again, if you're not technical, I would advise you to skip this part for now. Okay, so now let's get into Claude Code for non-technical founders. This is by far going to be the simplest explanation you will get for Claude Code. I'm not going to open up some dark looking screen with weird small fonts. I'm going to show you exactly how you need to use Claude Code if you're not technical at all, because that's exactly what I do as well. And it gets me a long way to where I need to be without the technical overwhelm. So let me switch over to Claude desktop app this time. For starters, this time you're going to use the desktop app. You're not going to use the web-based application because Claude Code doesn't sit on the web. It sits on your computer typically. Now, it's in the same place inside your desktop app where you've got the chat and co-work. But this time we are using Claude Code. There are quite a few features here that are useful. I'm going to walk you through all of them, and all the work that we have done so far, for example, connectors or skills or everything else, is going to be quite relevant here as well. And again, the approach that we're going to take here is that of being a non-technical business owner. So Claude Code, simply put, is not a chat tool. You don't chat to it and it gives you written responses. I mean, you can use it for that, but that's not its best use case. It's like taking a sword and using it to, sew some clothes together. Instead, I want you to think about Claude Code as something that has full access to your terminal, to your computer, where you are sitting at the moment, and it's going to help you read, write, run and debug code as well. Like, one of the best use cases I've found for Claude Code is actually building applications for me, for which I'm already paying every single month. Instead, it's able to build them for me, and I can run them from my computer, and I can even run them from the web. But I won't go too much into how to develop an application with Claude Code in this tutorial, but I'm going to show you where everything is and how you can utilize it. So again, some people have a very technical way of setting this up. I do not want you to do that. You can choose to do that if you want to. I can't stop you from doing so, but this is enough. And just like in Claude Code, you work inside of folders. So this is where you connect your folders, and this is where you can also connect via remote if you want to, which is particularly useful if you're using the dispatch feature here, which means you can actually use Claude from your phone. That is, you can give it commands and it can run commands on your computer while you're away, but you're walking around and doing things in a shopping mall, for example. So Claude Code shows you how you are using Claude Code every single day, every single week. So here you can see your statistics, like how much consumption you are doing, and you can see exactly how and what kind of model you tend to favor more. In my case, that is Sonnet. And right here, you can also see how far along you are in your consumption. So here, for example, I'm 38% of my 5-hour limit and about 13% my weekly limit, and Claude Design I haven't actually used this week yet, so that's down to 0%. Now you've got some other things here where you can get Claude Code to ask for permissions. If it's going to execute something, it can ask you for permission, or you can just accept the edits as they come, or you can put into plan mode, where if you're developing a software, if you're developing a thing that's going to take a few steps, you can ask it to plan first, or you can completely bypass permission. Now just be careful when you do that, because what this means essentially is that you leave Claude Code running on your computer. You can walk away, you can do other things, you can work on other projects, and it's just going to continue doing things behind the scenes for you, which if you're comfortable with, that's fine. Some people want more control, more autonomy, so you may not want to give Claude that. And then right over here, you've got some extra buttons. So for example, here you can add files or folders as you would otherwise do. You can use slash commands to, for example, schedule things, or you can even call skills from there. For example, I can just do that right here. And also you've got the ability to add plugins and other connectors here too. And then if you want to use the voice mode, you can use the voice mode with Claude Code as well. You can talk to it and basically vibe your way to coding whatever it is you want. When you are building out a complex project, I would always advise you to first plan it out, because if you can plan it out, then there's less chances of mistake. And again, I don't want you to try and do everything in one shot with Claude. It pretty much never works out unless you have planned everything exceptionally well. So let's talk about one of the most important part of using Claude, that is the claude.md file. And let me explain that going back on the whiteboard. So basically, a Claude MD file is a markdown document that you put inside your Claude project. You can do it in Claude Code as well. I've done it before. Doesn't really work as well in projects. I mean, you can use it too, but projects already have instructions. But these are persistent information that you provide to the project. So anytime you start a new chat, anytime it starts afresh, it has to go through that. Those are all the instructions it has to absorb before it can start doing anything on your behalf within that project. So this is where you can define technical standards, you give project context, behavioral guidelines, or just setting up recurring tasks. So for example, if you have some things you want to be done all the time, that's where you're going to put that. I'll give you an example. One of the projects, of course, that I'm doing is to do with, creating emails and then queuing them up inside of my MailView account. And for that, there's a Claude MD file that describes the entire thing from start to finish, what it does. It doesn't have actual code for what needs to be done at every point, but it has like direction and routines that point there. Not to be confused with routines that actually Claude has on the left hand side, which I'll show you in a minute too. So the way to build a Claude MD file is quite straightforward. Don't download one from the internet and try and use it. Instead, I want you to start a new project within Claude. So let me show you this. So just go ahead and start a new project in Claude as you're doing this, and work inside a folder and then explain exactly what this is about. So something as simple as, I would like to help me create a new Claude.md file, which we are going to use for this project. Here's what I'm looking to establish, and it's going to build one for you. And the more details you can provide this time, the more time you're going to save in the future, because as details as this will be, it will then follow that to the letter for you. It's not going to listen, and it's not going to think outside the bounds of that project. So again, this is very, very crucial, and I would advise you to always build that when you are building a new project. Now, if you don't do that, Claude's going to automatically build one for you, so it's okay. But just a good practice, almost kind of like what you're doing in planning mode, is you first get to build a Claude.md file. Now, let's talk about wipe coding. I'm not actually going to build an app in front of you. I've got some really good training around that you can check on the channel. But what I will tell you is that wipe coding in the simplest form is you communicating with Claude, explaining what you want, and letting Claude just go about it. So there's many ways to wipe code, but the best way that I found requires a little bit of patience and organization. I'm going to show you again like what that looks like in this case. So if I go back to the whiteboard, I want to show you this. If you are wipe coding, always start with a plan. So explain to Claude what you're trying to do, and always start with a plan. Now, it doesn't hurt if you actually provided some benchmarks as well. So for example, let's say if you're building out an application, which is the calorie tracker, look around for different calorie tracker applications. So let's go do that right now. So there's quite a few different calorie track apps that are out there, MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, Yazoo, amongst many others. And when you take screenshots from those and drop them into Claude while you are doing the planning, it gives Claude more context about what you're trying to do. So utilize that to really understand what you want to do. Now, one trick that I found to be really effective when I'm building my own applications is to tell Claude to do some research on the gaps out there. So if you can find competitors yourself, great. But if not, ask Claude as part of its planning to research the competitors and figure out what are the gaps in the market. So for example, let's do this right now. I'm going to switch back over to Claude, and I'm going to pretend that I'm building out a calorie tracker app. So we're going to use Sonnet still, and let's talk to Claude about this and see what it does. Hey, as a test, I'm looking to build a calorie tracker app that I could use for myself on my phone, and eventually I want to commercialize it. There's already cal.ai, MyFitnessPal, and so on. I don't want anything too extensive. I want something as simple as where I can take a picture of the food and it measures its calories and macros, and basically saves that and builds like a day-to-day calendar for me. Could you plan it out? Now, before you actually plan it out, can you research the competition for this and tell me if there's any clear gaps in the market that I could utilize to potentially commercialize my application? So a simple prompt like this is going to allow you to look for gaps in the market with products that you are thinking about creating. We're going to switch to plan mode, and this is where Claude's going to look for other web calorie tracker apps, and is going to look at what already exists. It's going to look at their features. It's going to look at their target audience and think about how we can differentiate ourselves from that. Then it's going to give me that feedback, which then I'm going to utilize to build my own as well. So let's check this out. The major players are these ones, and it explains what their weakness is. They're an expensive premium. They got acquired by this, which is cal.ai. And there's less community, weaker macro granularity, no photo scanning at all, fully manual, and so on and so forth. So the big single is that cal.ai got acquired, and clear market gap is no guilt, no shame UX gap. So I think it's still going. So for example, in this case, it says that UCL research found that calorie apps are causing measurable emotional harm. Right, that's a big one. Shameful logging, bad foods, anxiety from negative calorie recommendations, privacy first tracking, the good enough accuracy sweet spot, honest non-restrictive goal setting, monetization, clean freemium without ads, variable and smart kitchen integration, which is emerging. So if I can figure out a gap in here, which is naturally good for me, I can fill that gap and create an application. So even before you start planning something out, if you're looking to commercialize, always look at gaps in the market as to what's missing. And then again, if you're not convinced, you can drill down more. Okay, let's look at these emerging markets, these emerging products. What are they doing right? What are they not doing right? How can you monetize that? And then you can also do the same for audience, because remember, building is not the only thing. You have to also think about the audience. And then again, you can say which audience is the most underserved by these applications, but also is willing to pay. And then it's going to do some research for you there as well. So again, we are kind of chatting at this point with Claude Code, but it's building up to something. And that is the point, is that this becomes the basis of what you're working on. This becomes the brain of your project. Now, the good thing about Claude Code is as you build stuff into it, it will actually test it for you within its own browser too. So what happens usually when it's building something is that this thing on the left opens up, on the right opens up, and you can see it can take screenshots of its own thing and it can test how it's doing. Especially when it comes to UX and UI, Claude's able to adjust based on what it is doing. This is a built-in utility. You don't need to do anything about it. Let me see if I can find one of those examples in the work that I've done, and I'll show you that right now. So for some reason, it looks like all my old chats are wiped out, but I can tell you convincingly that this thing opens up here where you can see preview. And again, there's the terminal mode as well, but personally, I've never really used it in here. I just open up CMD, but if you need to execute something, you can do this within terminal here as well. So now you have the full system, every piece of information you need to use Claude to run your business for you. But knowing how you can set it up is actually a little bit different from knowing how you can push it and take it to the next level. So I put Claude to a simple test. Make me as much money as possible within 24 hours. And this video shows you exactly what happened.